G'day there guys, I want to say you look damn fine today, and I hope your day looks even better. It's your main man Markee, and welcome back to another episode of r/AmITheA. Now if you love today's bloody good content, sit back, relax, chuck a like on the video, a prawn on the Barbie, and get ready for some good content. Thank you. Posted by user Box of Cardigans. Titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my friend her son isn't in the gifted program? So a little bit of background. My oldest son is 9 years old and has been at the same school since kindergarten. He's been friends with Joe since they were in school together. Joe's mum, Kelly, has been my friend since then too. We are fairly close, and our families were in a pandemic bubble when the school was virtual. This year, the boys are in 3rd grade, and our elementary school splits children up into 3 different groups starting that year. One is the normal track, one is accelerated, and one is a little slower to accommodate all the kids' learning paces. They keep the groups named by animals, so the kids don't know which group is which. My son is in the kangaroos, while Joe is in the koalas. We figured out which group was which when my son had already learned 2 weeks ago what Joe was just learning. I confirmed with a few other mums who had their children in the kangaroos group, and my son is in the accelerated program. Kelly was talking about a group project the kids have to do. They basically have to make a quiz on the material they're learning and turn it into a kind of game on some website, similar to a multiple choice quiz. My son and his group had done that particular quiz a few weeks ago, and I offered if Joe wanted some ideas, he could ask my son what he did on his. Kelly paused and asked how were Joe and my son in the same class but doing things at different times. I told her my son was in a different group where they must be going through the material quicker. Kelly got a little offended and asked if Joe was in a slow group. I wasn't sure what to say, but I just explained that my son seems to be in the group that is moving a bit faster, but of course I was not certain because the teachers do that on purpose. Now, Kelly has been a little off with me, and my husband seems to think I shouldn't have told her or mentioned anything about the groups or my son helping Joe, and that it just made her feel bad. Am I the a-hole? And edit, yes, my son is in the accelerated program. As I explained in a comment, our district splits into the gifted track in 5th grade. My son was tested, and his scores were high, but we weren't sure what group he was in until he went back to school in person this semester. OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the a-hole. I told Kelly her son is in the slower group, and she was offended. I've been told I'm the a-hole for saying that, and even revealing what group and what pace my kid is at. In all honesty, you kinda have to blame the school here for keeping the parents in the dark about the groups the kids are in and what each one means, but before you go yelling at me in the comments, the kids, for sure, they absolutely understand the group dynamics. They're not airheads, and of course they're going to notice the obvious differences in the learning here. But at the same time, the school is probably doing this to avoid problems with the parents, especially ones like this OP. It's going to be a lose-lose situation for a kid with a stupid parent that'll either insist they go into a faster group when they're in a slower one, or put ridiculous expectations on them when they're in that faster one. I'm willing to bet that's what's going on here. OP is bragging about their child being in a faster group than this other mother in this situation. That definitely makes them an a-hole here for judging and looking down upon another mother and her child just because that child needs a bit more time and help to learn some material in school. It's nothing to be ashamed of or to ridicule others for. The school is stuck in a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of spot with terrible people like this OP. OP, you're the a-hole. Now in the comments, S. Howard995 says, Be honest. You were smug when you offered to have your son help her son. You could have said nothing or something neutral like, that sounds like a fun project for the kids. You got cold on it. You're the a-hole, and who knows, maybe you're wrong. That's the vibe I got too. Oh, my son already did those. Do you want him to help your son? How would that not be a dead giveaway that your son was in the gifted program? You're the a-hole. I was with you until you felt the need to confirm with other moms that your son was in the accelerated group and then subtly found a way to point that out to your friend. I can't look into your heart and see your motives, but I suspect that there was some brag in there. Am I the only one who thinks this is such a weird layout for schooling? Is it a weird private school thing? In the 2 states I've lived in, and all the other ones I've heard of, the schools had gifted programs, resource classes, various supports, and special ed programs. But you had to get evaluations to be placed in different programs for accelerated coursework or accommodations. None of this secret code-named group stuff where they quietly funnel the slower learners into a lower class. Super odd in my opinion. Edited to add, and of course in special ed, we had diploma track kids, who did the state standard tests and whatnot, and the non-diploma track kids who were usually ones who had diagnosed intellectual disabilities and did not do grade level work or take the standardized tests. But that's a different thing entirely than what OP describes. You're the a-hole. I think once you figured out what was going on, you should have kept it to yourself. If Kelly doesn't realize that her child is slow, it's not your place to be the one to tell her. Also, if it's only a difference of a few weeks, that's not really all that significant. If your kid was learning algebra while Kelly's was learning subtraction, then that would be a major difference. So I think you should apologize to Kelly and just assume that the classes are all learning the same things, but have shuffled lesson plans a little. Our next post is by user Marine Glow, titled, "Am I the a-hole for telling my dad his mistake isn't my problem to fix?" So I, 20 female, live about 2 hours from my dad. My dad and mum divorced when I was 9, he remarried when I was 14, and by then I mostly lived with my mum. My younger brother, 16 male, and sister, 17 female, lived mostly there too. Then our mum died a 1.5 years ago, and they moved to our dad's. Our dad has younger stepkids, ages 7 to 11, and I never really had much of a relationship with them. When I see my dad, I am kind, I treat them the same way as my siblings, but to me it isn't really the same, and I do make much more of an effort with my siblings. Which makes sense to me. I usually see them once or twice a month, and we go watch a movie or go shopping, and generally hang out. They've been to my apartment a few times too. So my dad ended up mentioning them sleeping at my place next month in front of his stepkids, and according to my siblings, the younger kids got upset and asked why they didn't get to go, and his wife was pissed that not only did he bring it up in front of her kids, but she didn't know that they actually stayed over at my place sometimes. Now he's getting crap because I don't make the same effort across all the kids. And he wanted me to fix it by including all the kids this time round and making the same effort going forward. I told him it wasn't my problem to fix, and I would keep being kind and inclusive when I see them, but I'm more comfortable with my siblings. I have a relationship with them, which isn't really there with his stepkids. I never lived with them and never had a sibling dynamic with them. He got mad and told me that I could help him make up for his mistake and make everyone happier by including them. My sister jumped in and said that it wouldn't make them happier, and they're usually glad from the break from the younger kids, especially after being cooped up with them for months during lockdown. He brought up how helping family should be important. Am I the a-hole? OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the a-hole. I don't know if I was a bit too harsh and stubborn with my refusal to help my dad. Maybe the most doubt I have comes from the fact his stepkids are feeling hurt that I never do that stuff with them, and they rarely see me while my siblings and I still have an ongoing relationship. And it's making my dad's life and marriage harder. I think whether you judge this a you're the a-hole or not the a-hole comes down largely to how much value you personally place on family and interpersonal relationships within it. OP obviously doesn't have much of a connection with these step-siblings, and I feel like they've justified themselves more than enough here to give me a solid case for judging them not the a-hole here. I also noticed OP lives 2 hours from the dad. That's a 4-hour round trip that turns into 8 hours when returning her siblings. I don't know how many of you guys want to do 8-hour round trips with a car full of kids, ages 7 to 17, once or twice a month, whenever they want to come stay at your apartment. As has been pointed out on here, 2 times a month is a goddamn lot of interaction with someone. A good chunk of people don't even see their parents once a month. On this subreddit, at least from what I've read. The dad's major gripe here is OP isn't helping him make up for his mistake. I can understand wanting to help out family, especially for personal screw-ups like this, but this is definitely not the way to go about it. OP shouldn't feel bad for denying taking these step-siblings to her apartment. I'm gonna have to go not the a-hole for this one. Now in the comments, Echo Romeo 571 says, "Not the a-hole. It's your apartment. Your dad doesn't get to decide who you host there. Plus, at your step-siblings' ages, you'd be babysitting more than anything. Is he going to pay for that?" Exactly. Not the a-hole, you don't have to have all the kids over. That's a lot of stress, and it makes sense to only include your siblings because they're older and can look after themselves. Also, these kids are basically strangers to you. Plus, by mistake, and the oldest kid being 11, the same number of years since OP's parents divorced, heavily implies these kids may actually be products of Dad's affair. Dad is trying to force the family he walked out on to make nice with his replacement family just so he doesn't look like the villain he is. These are her step-siblings, not half-siblings. Just because the age matches up does not mean he went out, had an affair, and is now denying all blood relation to his stepchildren. Not the a-hole. Sometimes in a blended family, siblings just aren't as close as parents want them to be. My stepbrother didn't even come to my wedding, but my stepmom holds this desperate idea that we're one big happy family when we just aren't. There's nothing wrong with not being close to step-siblings, and it's not your job to make your dad's mistake all better. You're not mean to the other kids, but you were never raised with them. If your dad hadn't married their mum, you would never have known them or been friends with them. They really aren't that much your family either, so why spend the time and money for a relationship that you aren't interested in cultivating? Sometimes in a traditional family, this happens too. I don't understand why people, most often parents, think they have the right to dictate the terms of someone else's relationships. They can mandate a level of behavior, i.e. prevent disrespect and bullying behavior, but that's it. Exactly. Family is a great concept and all, but everybody has the people they click with easily and people they don't. And the label family doesn't change that. It just means that you try a little harder or make more effort. Some people are super close to step-siblings because their personalities are a great match, and others don't quite click with blood siblings they grew up with. I love my brother, but we're totally different people and have very different likes, dislikes, and irritations. I feel loyalty because he's a sibling. You always do with family, but I wouldn't say we are close at all. Beyond try to help family, you really can't force that stuff. Not the a-hole. I'm a stepmom and I wouldn't dream of pressuring my older stepkid to look after his younger siblings, especially for a sleepover, if he didn't feel comfortable because he's not the parent, and it's not his responsibility to do this if he doesn't want to. Ages 7 to 11 plus 2 teens is a lot of work even for bio parents. Why on earth would your dad and stepmom ask you to take them all for a sleepover? That's 4 to 5 kids for a 20-year-old to look after for a whole weekend? Not cool to ask this of you at all. Sounds like your dad and stepmom want a weekend off from all kids and are shoving this onto you. Our next post is by user Throwaway Corona Baby 1, titled, "Am I the a-hole for wanting my parents to meet our newborn before my wife's mother?" Okay, so hear me out. English is not my first language. I'm male 27, and I just had an argument about this with my wife, female 24. 2 weeks ago, we had our first child, and she's a healthy baby girl. Some background. She's the first grandchild on both sides. I come from a large family with 5 siblings, and my wife grew up as an only child in a single-parent household. Now, my wife is very close to her mother, which is understandable, and me and mother-in-law have a great relationship as well. Our original plan was for mother-in-law to move in with us during the later stages of the pregnancy because my wife wanted her there for support, and I completely understood and had no issues with that. Now the issue is that mother-in-law lives abroad, and as you all know, the pandemic has happened, and mother-in-law's country went into lockdown and pretty much put a stop to all international travel, so our original plan didn't happen. Might guess that one's, Australia, but who knows? This made my wife very sad. She had been looking forward to having her mother close again, and I completely understood that. Pregnancy is scary and is no joke. My parents and 3 of my siblings, however, live 2 houses down the road, and during the pandemic, we've been keeping them in our bubble. We've been having dinners and hangouts regularly. Now, here is our issue. We've been home for 1.5 weeks. We've not seen anyone, and again, I have not pushed us to see anyone. But I did ask my wife when she reckoned that she was ready for my parents and my siblings to meet their new niece and grandchild. She replied a bit annoyed that she wanted her mother to be the first one besides me to meet and hold her in real life, and that this was very important to her. Under normal circumstances, I would not object, but we don't know when they will be opening up for international travel, and for mother-in-law to be vaccinated and to fly over the Atlantic could potentially take months. Well, there goes my Australia theory. I said it was really unfair to let my family wait for such a long time to meet their first grandchild, especially when they live so close. This did not sit well, and my wife and I had an argument. She said that since she gave birth and carried the pregnancy, she had the final say. Normally, I would agree, but we don't even know when mother-in-law can come over, and I really want my parents to meet our daughter as well. They are eager. They have not pushed or asked in any way, but I can tell from talking to my mother that she can barely contain herself. My wife called me a massive a-hole, and that I refused to listen to her and could not possibly understand what women go through. I was just baffled and sad, and I feel I need outside perspective on this. Would I be an a-hole if I took our daughter to see my parents? This is a tough one, and I think it requires a bit more reality and grounding than the wife is allowing in this situation. It could be months before those parents are able to come and visit the child. Is it reasonable for OP and OP's parents to have to wait months on end before they're able to see the child in person just because OP's partner flat out demands her parents see them first? I don't think that's reasonable, fair, or realistic in any way, shape, or form, given the current state of the world and the likelihood of international travel opening up anytime soon. OP also says they want to take their newborn daughter to see the parents against the wife's explicit wish. I can agree in this short period of time, if they go against the wife's explicit wishes and does this behind her back, then 100% you would be the a-hole. But as time goes on with this child, and her holding OP's family back from seeing the child because of this unrealistic expectation, then it starts to venture into not the a-hole for OP. More likely, she's the a-hole for expecting something that just simply cannot happen anytime soon. So yeah, it's a mix of not the a-hole and you're the a-hole, depending on what happens from here. Now, in the comments, Webby Vanderquack says, quote, "Would I be an a-hole if I took our daughter to see my parents?" End quote. Without your wife's permission? Absolutely you're the a-hole. That would be a huge betrayal. Obviously your child is likely to meet your parents before hers, but now is not the time to push this. You shouldn't be starting arguments and complaining about what's really unfair when your wife is only 10 days postpartum, coping with her first newborn baby and missing her mother. You need to back off and be kind. I was also thinking maybe wait for a bit longer than 1.5 weeks out of the hospital before going into this topic that is clearly very important to her. I would put everyone sucks here because of her comment on having the final say because she gave birth. Absolutely agree. They are yards away and can't meet their first and only, so far, grandchild until some unknown date that her mum's country ends lockdowns. She gets vaccinated. It takes a month between the 2 shots, plus another 10 days to be fully effective, so another 40 days if that starts tomorrow minimum, and then has time to be around long enough? Plus, I gave birth, so I have the right to dictate things, is not an acceptable attitude. That's where she's the a-hole. If you aren't there yet, but if you did it behind her back, you would absolutely be the a-hole too. I would consider having a discussion with you, your wife, and her mum. This could backfire if she says yes, wait for me to come in 2 months minimum. Explain your issues and whether it will really take anything away from her mum to have the support of your entire family with things. They would be able to help with household chores and whatnot. And remind your own family that postpartum, the best help they can give is not with the baby, but with literally anything else. Letting mum be mum and helping with things like cooking, laundry, vacuuming is the best support they can give. Although they should also get some baby time too. I call BS. OP seems to have been ready to accept all of her conditions. He was perfectly happy enabling her to get what she wanted. It's nobody's fault that the pandemic has shut down the world, but with mother-in-law living abroad and having no certainty of when she'll be able to get her grandchild, it's incredibly selfish of her not to allow OP's parents to see their grandchild when they're just a few doors down. It's not like OP's wife said nobody for the first 2 weeks, so your 10 days postpartum argument holds no water, as we're to assume had the plan been carried out. The grandma living abroad would have seen the child within the first 24 to 48 hours, since she would have been there for the end stages of pregnancy. I've got a newborn baby as well, and her mum was here 2 days after giving birth. If my wife's mum couldn't make it to see the baby for whatever reason, and she told me that my mother couldn't see the baby, I would consider that she's holding my child hostage. This blanket allowance for OP's wife to not allow her mother-in-law to see the baby would be met with harsh criticism if the roles were reversed. Are you really thinking that the mum should be allowed to keep her child from the other side of the family for several months, just so her mum can be the first one to hold the kid? That's a level of selfishness I can't comprehend, and it's a total lack of respect for OP and OP's family. Unbelievable that you assume the mum acting like that is in any way acceptable. I don't understand why men get zero say in these things, but alas, that's the world we're living in. Not the a-hole for feeling that way, but you would be the a-hole if you took your daughter to your parents behind your wife's back. Maybe try to include your mother-in-law in your life more. Video chats and maybe send her a lock of the baby's hair. That way you can show your wife that your mother-in-law is important to you and to your baby. After that, you can revisit the meeting your family thing. Your wife is maybe being a little unreasonable, but actively doing something to upset her would be an a-hole move. She's still your wife. Best of luck to you. And our next post is by user Peanut Assassin or Not, titled, "Am I the a-hole for contaminating honey with peanut butter and not telling my peanut allergic housemate?" Yeah, this sounds bad, but hear me out. I live with fake name who is allergic to peanuts. He says he's fine if I eat them around him, but be careful with cross-contamination. I limit my peanut consumption, don't eat peanut foods around him just in case, and am careful when I do. I clean everything after. I don't want to take any risks because it's not my risk to make. It's been 2 years and hasn't been a problem until last week. I have a doting mother who loves giving fancy gifts, like my Easter basket this year, which had not been much in the way of chocolate, but much in the way of homemade preserves and a jar of honey. Not your supermarket plastic tub, but a proper glass jar, and looked so fancy, I expected to see the names of the bees listed on it. Nope, just the location the bees lived in. Now, we have some food rules. Bottle of milk in the fridge, ours. The fancy honey with the name stuck on it for good measure, mine. We're pretty good with not stealing each other's food, so I feel pretty safe with leaving fancy stuff in the kitchen. Only, I don't have much opportunity to eat fancy honey. I mean, pretty sure you're meant to do something special with fancy honey, right? Probably, but I don't know what. So last week, when I made myself some toast, I made a childhood favorite: peanut butter and honey on toast. And because it was my honey with my fake name taped across the top, I didn't think twice before dipping that peanut butter knife in my fancy honey. Probably a waste of fancy honey, but we were out of regular honey. After that, I washed the knife and plates before putting them into the dishwasher and wiped down the bench just in case. I wasn't home a couple of days later when Fake Name decided to help himself to my honey. Now, following a hospital trip, he's home and safe, and we've had a chat about how to prevent such things in the future. But the question has arisen: who here is the a-hole? Me for not writing "contains nuts" on the contaminated honey, despite knowing my fake name is allergic, or Fake Name for looking at my fancy honey and deciding to help himself to just a little bit. I mean, it's pretty annoying to have someone else eat your food, but the punishment shouldn't be a potential death sentence. And let's face it, who hasn't swiped just a little bit of a spread or condiment which doesn't belong to them? And time to fess up here, I'm the reason we were out of regular honey. We can't decide. So tell me, Reddit, am I the a-hole? And there's some edits. Whoa, did not expect this many comments, can't answer them all, so I hope I didn't miss any. Question: why didn't Fake Name have or use an EpiPen? Answer: he did. The EpiPen is to keep him alive until the ambulance arrived. Question: why is it your fault there's no honey? Are you a honey guzzler or hoarder? Are you Winnie the Pooh? Answer: gifted Easter basket at Easter, ate chocolate, ate nothing else because it was kind of fancy. Fake Name himself continued to eat the regular, communal honey, which is a cheap squeezy bottle. I happened to use the last of the regular communal honey, so added it to the shopping list, but no shopping took place between me using the last of the honey and Fake Name eating my honey. It was a matter of days, not weeks. I am not Winnie the Pooh. Why didn't you rush out to replace the honey as soon as you finished it? Because it was honey, not toilet paper? How often do you go grocery shopping? About once a week, though that seems unusual to some people. And do you usually steal each other's food? Do you resent each other for stealing food? No and no, but that said, a dab of honey is no great crime. Who had to pay his astronomical medical bill? The taxpayer. It's called public health. And do you two hate each other? Nah, we had an initial argument, mostly because we were both, him especially, scared crapless over the incident, but it soon delved into a "I'm the a-hole. No, I'm the a-hole" kind of discussion. Based on that form of argument, then I'm inclined to say no a-holes here for this one. I think it is normal, albeit a little rude, to be taxing some honey or peanut butter from people from time to time, but I think in this situation, it's ended in no skin off my back or yours. Yeah, they shouldn't have been going into OP's stuff and taxing some fancy honey. I think Fake Name has learned their lesson on this one. Some people may feel differently about that, but these two communicated effectively here, and it's not destroyed their relationship at the end of the day, so I'm sticking with no a-holes here. Now in the comments, Cal Kiki says, "Not the a-hole. This never would have happened if your roommate hadn't helped himself to your food without asking. This is all on them. Just a quick, 'Hey, can I have a bit of your fancy honey?' would have prevented this entire situation, as you obviously would have told him, 'Nah bro, I double-dipped a peanut butter knife in that.' Ask before you help yourself to other people's things. If I was OP, I would straight up tell him not to touch any of my foods or condiments going forward. The roommate sounds like he's not the type to take personal responsibility for himself and blames other people for his mistakes. I would dare to say that he would probably be quick to pursue a lawsuit if he suffered severe injuries. Don't let him misconstrue your past generosity as an open-door policy of helping himself. Explicitly tell him no. I don't know. It sounds more like this is a friendly debate they're having here than he's about to call his lawyers. But maybe I'm getting the tone wrong. I agree with you, but Am I the A-hole is notoriously full of commenters who can't separate their own experiences from the posted story, making massive assumptions while judging an Am I the A-hole. Irony is dead. Not the A-hole. Your roommate learned to leave other people's things alone. When you're highly allergic to foods, you only eat things that you know are safe. If he hadn't been eating something that didn't belong to him, he would have been fine. Not the A-hole. He knows and has approved you eating peanut products in the house, therefore he knows there's a risk of cross-contamination with your foods. Something clearly labelled as yours is therefore not guaranteed safe, and the onus is on him to check with you around cross-contamination before helping himself to it. It's not unreasonable of him to have a bit. It's unreasonable, and therefore he's the a-hole, to blame you for his emergency when you had already taken steps to make it clear that this was for you only. Posted by user HackRiderPoser, titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my mum she could hold her grandchild at my funeral? So, I, 28 female, cannot have kids without death or serious injury, and passionately do not want them. Nor does my husband. And no, before anyone assumes we're kid-hating monsters, we don't dislike kids. We have a combined total of 8 nieces and nephews, all of whom we love dearly. They just can't live in our house. My mother, bless her heart, is currently infected with baby rabies. Her friends keep getting grandkids, and the best I'm willing to do is dogs. Yesterday, I was talking on the phone with my mum, and she casually brings up how nice it would be to have a baby around. Now, I have a policy for people trying to pry about my reproductive affairs, and that policy is to make them as unfrickin' comfortable as I can so they never ask again. My mum has never been on the receiving end, but she has seen me do it. The first time I'm like, nah, too much work and they don't even get cute for like 3 years. Puppies are born cute and stay cute. But she kept pressing, saying things like, dogs won't love you like kids do. And here's where I may be the a-hole. I snapped and said, well, if you want a baby that bad, I can make sure to put it in my will that you can hold it through my funeral. My mum just made a noise like a mouse being stepped on and hung up on me. She's now refusing to answer any of my text messages about anything. I might have overreacted just a little, and she is my mum. So, am I the a-hole? And edit, yes, my mum knows about the health conditions. Yes, my mum knows about the health conditions. I was born with them, and they've worsened over time. Edit 2, I'm very transparent about not being able to have and not wanting kids, but I do love the kids in my life. I get why you did it, in all honesty. I just think that sometimes you don't have to be so blunt with people. I know I've advocated for that in the past, but usually people will get off your back when you don't give them what they want, and you just give it time. I do agree what you said was hurtful, and even you admit you were going for a reaction there, since you say she's seen you do it to people before. But in saying that, you did present her with the reality of the situation should you ever have a child. So maybe then this is just a case of the truth hurts, and she couldn't handle the truth in that moment, so she just hung up. I mean, I can't particularly blame her for that. At the end of the day, it's no huge drama. You guys seem to be doing okay and not ending all relation with each other, so I'm gonna go not the a-hole for this one. Now in the comments, Sincerely Sinclair says, not the a-hole. You tried handling this with tact. Your mother pursued the topic, and you told her exactly what would happen should you decide to ever have children. You would die. I don't see what she has to complain about when there are 8 other children running around. Why does she need a baby from you? And OP replies, I'm her only biological kid. She won't feel like a grandma till I pop one out, apparently. Wow, that's very cold. Do your siblings know the stance that your mother has taken regarding biological grandchildren? And OP replies, no. My mum dotes on my siblings' kids. She adores them really. Part of the 8 total are on my husband's side, and I have 2 half-siblings that I didn't meet until I was 23, and they have kids. I'm concerned that she won't feel like a grandma until you have one. What does that say about the other kids? She loves them. I think she just wants a grandchild that she doesn't have to share. Presumably, even if you were to ever have kids, your spouse would have parents or some form of adult figure. Wouldn't she have to share then? I don't know. I just think she wants some that are hers. Boomers, man, what can you do? Ah, I see. Your mum never stopped thinking of you as her possession / an extension of herself, so any kids you have would thus also belong to her, not like individual humans with free will and autonomy. For the record, this isn't boomer nonsense. This is narcissist nonsense. My boomer mother totally gets why I don't want kids. She's a tad disappointed because grandkids are fun, but she recognizes she does not have a right to them. Let your mum be mad. Don't play into her silent treatment BS by contacting her. Let her get over it herself and then reach out to you. You can apologize for being harsh only after she apologizes first. I'm on the same boat as you, so I'm going with a firm not the a-hole. What is it with people not respecting someone's choices on not having kids? Just because we are made to reproduce does not mean that we should have to. The thing I hate most about people who don't accept the no are those who say, "Oh, you're young. Wait for your biological clock to kick in. Okay, Bob, whatever you say." I'm going with not the a-hole on this one. Yes, it was over the top, but I salute your willingness to commit to something like that. She's your mum, and she's seen you deal with this in the past, so I don't get how and why she would think it would go any other way, and why she would twist the knife into you for something that more than likely hurt like hell when you learned it. And OP replies, "It hurt a lot initially. I was devastated, because in the area where I live, people usually start having kids pretty young, and everything has to be kid-friendly. But about the time the nephews started coming, I realized that I really dislike taking care of babies. And by the time I got to college, I discovered how much fun it is to be the cool wine aunt. That helped, but every so often it still hurts, especially when my mum presses the issue." And I left out the last edit in this one at the end here because I feel like it's a good way to give you guys some closure with this one. It's just edit. So a couple of things here. 1, thank you all so much for the awards and the kind feedback. I appreciate it. I did not expect this to blow up like it did. 2, my mum did message me back and apologized. She would also like us to come around at 12 p.m. to tidy up the yard, and she's going to pay us with lunch and beer. So I guess that's one way to round the story out, but I don't know. Do you guys like how this one ended? Do you feel like that's a good resolution? Our next post is by user Dense Position 8159, titled, "Am I the a-hole for going above my son's teacher after she asked him if he was gay?" So my son is 13 and is quirky. It's easy to confuse a 13-year-old boy who isn't really into sports and more into Greek literature as being effeminate. He is also a late bloomer. Given these circumstances in middle school, it's very easy to be labeled as being gay. As his dad, I'm pretty sure he will be straight. He has a few issues with some classmates that's more related to personality conflicts. Those same classmates are your average middle school a-holes who are a-holes to everyone. It doesn't rise up to the standard of bullying. Long story short, my son's teacher noticed this and wanted to discuss it with him. My son said he didn't care, and his teacher went off about how people shouldn't treat him like that because he's different. My son was very confused, and his teacher asked, "Well, you're queer, aren't you?" My son came home crying over it, and the comment was made within an earshot of another kid who laughed. Now, that is bullying. I emailed the teacher, who quickly turned it into me, saying that he was concerned that my son wasn't getting the support at home if he was queer and was being bullied at school over it. I told him my son's sexuality was none of his business. He apologized and asked to meet with me and my son personally to apologize in person. I thought about it and decided an apology wasn't enough. There needed to be accountability, and this teacher needed to be taught a lesson himself. I went to the principal, who was pretty livid after spending a few days looking into the matter. She wouldn't say what the outcome was, but the teacher was MIA, and I heard he got suspended for a couple of days. And edit, for people who are asking me how I know if my son is straight, it's a moot point. The real point is that his sexuality is none of his teacher's business. Furthermore, if he thought my son was being bullied or harassed, then he should have gone to me instead of taking matters into his own hands. The teacher didn't see my son getting beaten up or even called a name. What he saw was my son being different than most of the other boys in his class and concluded that he must be queer or gay or whatever. I think absolutely the teacher was being inappropriate here, and they didn't do the right thing in this situation, absolutely. I do think they deserved to be MIA and whatever happens as a result of it, because this seems like unacceptable behavior. But as is going to be beaten like a dead horse, you can't just assume your son's sexuality, especially at 13. That's really weird and creepy, and the answer you should give is, I don't know his sexuality. And then you leave it at that because, man, what the hell? So for going above your son's teacher after she asked him if he was gay, I'd say not the a-hole for that one, but I don't know. I get a bad vibe from you, so I'm gonna have to go with everyone sucks here for this one. Now in the comments, Master Blaster says, everyone sucks here. The teacher sucks the most, and what he did was incredibly inappropriate. He should have found a way to signal to all potential LGBTQIA+ questioning students that he was an ally without directly confronting your son. When I taught, I made it very open and clear that I'm supportive of the gay community and trans rights by simply asking the students for their pronouns and preferred names on their classroom surveys. Lo and behold, I had students coming out to me, sharing about their personal home issues, etc. It should always be the student who approaches the teacher to discuss these issues, never the other way around. That said, I'm also giving you an a-hole rating, but a gentle one. You've stated that the classmate's previous behavior doesn't rise to the level of bullying, but it sounds like it did. You've also said that it's easy to confuse your son as gay, and that you're pretty sure that he will be straight because you're his father? What? These comments suggest the tiniest hint of homophobia. He's already gay or straight or bi or whatever, he's just still figuring it out like every other kid his age. The comment about how it's easy to confuse him as gay is pretty loaded with stereotypes and assumptions. Gay people come in all kinds of forms. I know a lot of MASC gay men who are into sports. One was a professional athlete. If you're saying stuff like that around the house, he may feel like it wouldn't be acceptable to come out to you, or he may convince himself that he is gay because he fits into the gay stereotype more than the straight one. Also, if the teacher truly believed your son may not have the support he needs to come out, I would take a moment to reflect on why the teacher felt that way. Their actions were inappropriate, but it's quite possible that your son has made some statements alluding to a fear of being gay, or had some other reaction that concerned the teacher. I don't think that you're a monster, and it seems clear to me that you love your son, but I would consider that his reaction to his teacher might warrant a conversation where you let him know that he will always be supported in your home, no matter who he loves. And edit, OP's responses make it pretty clear that he is homophobic and would struggle to accept his son if he turns out to be gay. I totally understand why the teacher had these concerns now. And OP replies, you sound like the teacher. Your worldview is reality when it's all about power. You sound like a person in denial of their own faults. Don't go to Reddit for advice if you cannot handle criticism. What the hell is wrong with you? This commenter took their time to post this incredibly insightful and empathetic comment, and you chose to go for this semi-personal trip? Wow. And OP replies, still none of his business. Dude, you're the one who came to Reddit for judgment and advice. What did you expect? Everyone sucks here. This reeks of you being enraged at the thought that someone suggested your son is gay and you punished the teacher for even suggesting it. The teacher may not have approached this in the best way, but at least he was willing to stand up and say something that to a struggling queer child may have been a godsend. And OP replies, I couldn't care less if my son is gay, but that's not his teacher's business. So let's flip this around then. Your son is gay and being bullied. The teacher sees the behavior but doesn't say or do anything. Would that be okay? Or would that non-action violate whatever anti-bullying policy the school has? Apples and oranges. Say my son was gay. Are you saying the teacher outing him would be an effective way of ending bullying? If my son was being bullied for any reason, then his teacher should bring it to my attention first, notwithstanding my kid being beaten up. I would never go to a parent first. Too many of them respond poorly. I'm emailing a guidance counselor so they can handle this far more gently than I ever could in a classroom. Our next post is by user Affectionate Cover 49, titled, Am I the a-hole for refusing to share baby stuff with my stepsister because we're never going to know each other as sisters? Title might sound bad. So my stepsister and I have been in each other's lives since we were 2, me, and 3, her. For the first decade, we primarily lived with each other in the household with our married parents. She saw her mum on occasion, but in general, lived with me, mum, stepdad. The times she was with her mum were pretty terrible because she would come back adamant to reject and hurt me. One time she told me she hoped I would die, so her dad would let her live with her mum. My stepdad had her in therapy. Most of our time together was spent with some form of supervision because of how she treated me. When she was 15, she decided to go live with her mum and cut me off, even going to the length of ignoring me in school and acting like I didn't exist. When she was 19, she started speaking to my stepdad and mum again, and over time, me. But she never really stopped being passive-aggressive about us not being related. She would say that I was her dad's stepkid, or say that I was someone she knew through family when talking to other people. I admit it was hard because we could have been sisters, but she didn't want that or was taught not to want it. As luck would have it, we're now both pregnant at the same time. She's due about 3 weeks after me, and she's been trying to be all buddy-buddy, whilst also saying things like, they're never going to know each other as cousins, and it's not like we're real sisters. So I think she's mostly trying to get free stuff. I ended up with a surplus of clothes because my partner has a huge family, and they all gave us a ton of newborn clothes. My stepdad was helping me box stuff up, and he mentioned it to my stepsister who wanted them. I said no. She said that it was catty of me to say no when I had too many to use. I told her I had already promised some to a friend, which was true. She told me, family trumps friends. I said, we're never going to know each other as sisters, so we're not really family. And she laughed, but then told my stepdad what I said. He told me the fact she was asking said she was maybe ready to move forward. I told him it's not true, but am I wrong? Am I the a-hole? I don't think you're all that petty or childish to have said that. Having a relationship with her was a childhood dream of yours after all, and she continuously and unashamedly stomped all over that dream time and time again. She's conscious of the fact that she's been a terrible person all your life, and is now trying to manipulate you for free clothes of all things. She sounds like a complete loser to me, and I don't know why you're giving her the time of day. He's only saying maybe she was ready to move forward because he doesn't want to get involved. He knows it'll create conflict and drama and pitch him against her, which he obviously doesn't want to do. Your stepdad wants to stay in everyone's good books, and asking you to share those clothes whilst completely dismissing your entire history with her is such a stupid, but I guess in a way understandable thing for him to do. It's no excuse. I can't excuse that behavior, but it does explain why he did it. His input seems like the crux of why you came to ask this question, and I just say ignore him. OP, You're not wrong for feeling the way you feel. Just don't give her the clothes and continue to have a strong backbone. Not the a-hole. Now in the comments, AITA Cruel World says, not the a-hole. Don't give her a thing. She's being manipulative. Yup. She can't treat you like crap for so long and then try to be all, let's be friends. That's dumb. Don't give her the baby's clothes. Find a way to make it clear to your stepdad that she just wants stuff from you and tell him about her previous comments. Not the a-hole. Exactly. If she really wanted to be family and put her past behind her, she would first apologize, then try to build a relationship without trying to get free stuff from you to prove she's sincere. She's only after your stuff, not the a-hole. Exactly this. How can someone genuinely want to move forward but never acknowledge how they wronged you and apologize? Especially when you take into account that she was still saying that her and OP aren't real sisters, and their babies wouldn't know one another as cousins. So this is all very recent, at least within the last couple months. Now she wants to turn around and claim family ties when there's stuff to be had for free? Nope. Tell her to keep that same energy she's had all this time. And if her dad says something, ask him why he's okay with her clear attempts to use you for free stuff. Because she has still been saying things along the lines of y'all not being family until she thought there was something to gain. Not the a-hole. Yeah, and why should the dad excuse stepsister for continually reminding OP they're not family, but tell OP she's in the wrong for not sharing her items? Stepsister is a major a-hole. She's an adult who has carried over her mean behavior from childhood and is now trying to use her bullying victim for gain. I can just imagine how she's going to talk to her kids about OP's kid. Her mother did it and screwed her up, now she'll repeat the pattern because she still hates OP. OP should just keep her distance for self-preservation and to keep toxicity out of her child's life. For real, her mum must have been spewing some serious bile. 2-year-olds don't just hate other kids for no reason. That's learned behavior. Not the a-hole. She's clearly trying to play you and your stepdad off against each other. This is a sad situation. It's obvious that her mother has been teaching her to hate you all her life, probably to get back at your stepdad for leaving, and now your stepsister's an adult, she either hasn't figured this out or can't be bothered to do anything about it. But that's not your issue. Regardless of the cause, she's a deeply toxic person for you to be around, and you're fully justified in limiting your contact with her as much as possible. Hopefully, she'll realize what's going on here and what it's costing her, and do the work to deal with her toxicity. I wouldn't count on it though. Also, she laughed when OP said no, like it was so ridiculous that OP would try to say no or go against her. She then, like you said, tried to pit OP and stepdad against each other. OP, I would tell your dad that whether you forgive her or not is up to you, and even if she's ready to move on, you may not be. That doesn't make you an a-hole. That makes you human beings because your feelings are valid. That doesn't make you an a-hole because she's trying to play the sisters card when she completely cut you off as family and treated you like you were invisible. So her trump card is useless to you because she alienated herself from you and now you don't consider her family. I would also mention to your stepdad that when he's not around, she still treats you horribly. Just because he doesn't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. Hence, there was a reason why you two were supervised growing up, so it doesn't happen in private / less likely to happen. If your stepdad still gives you hell, tell him he's welcome to get her some clothes, but she alienated you first, and that you own those clothes, and so you get to decide if she gets some or not. Hell, OP, if your significant other is on your side / has seen how she has treated you, get him to back you up. He gets a decision in this too, and when it's 2 against 1, she has even less power. Stepdad doesn't count in this because this issue is between you and your stepsister. Also something important to consider. OP, if he is helping box stuff and she's also around, be careful that she doesn't try to swipe anything, because in my opinion, that doesn't sound too far-fetched with her description. I also would be wary of your stepdad feeling guilted by her and gifting her some baby clothes on behalf of you to try to make things better between you two. I don't know if that's in his character per se, but she does seem to be able to manipulate him to some extent. Anyway, congrats on the pregnancy and good luck. And our next post is by user Am I the A-hole pregnant shirt, titled, Am I the a-hole for making fun of a heavily pregnant woman's shirt? Hi all, I'm a nurse and one of the senior doctors at my department really hates me. She calls me stupid, berates me, and calls me an idiot in front of patients and other staff members, and even makes fun of my clothes when I change out of my work stuff. Doctor is heavily pregnant and is on maternity leave. However, she came in today to drop off some paperwork, as well as to have a catch-up with some of the colleagues before she gives birth. I will admit that as much as I hate her, Doctor is a very stylish woman. She wears these gorgeous suits or work dresses and designer heels and everything. She does have very good taste. I had no interest in seeing her when she showed up, but I went into the staff room for my break when Doctor was chatting to some of the others, and she loudly said, "Ugh," when she saw me. Doctor didn't look like her usual self. She was wearing tracksuit bottoms and a t-shirt that belonged to her boyfriend. I've seen him wearing it when he picked her up from work a couple of times. And she's pregnant, fair enough. However, she soon loudly asked if I was going to wear my tramp clothes when my shift ended. I think that's akin to a slutty clothes or something like that. I don't know, I kind of censor words on this. I responded, "At least my shirt fits me." This shocked everyone, and later one of the other nurses said that I was disgusting for making fun of Doctor's pregnancy and baby bump. What the hell? Okay, maybe it would have been better to just not take the bait, but I never made fun of her for being pregnant. I was making fun of her because she's normally Little Miss Fashionable and tries to make fun of my clothes, but was now stuck in her boyfriend's shirt, which was way too big for her. You say you're just fighting back because she's constantly talking down at you and shouting at you in front of the workplace, but you haven't escalated this with anyone in like HR or tried to get someone to step in and control her wickedness. I'm not one to victim blame in this situation, but surely you punching back in this scenario isn't going to make her stop punching down on you for the rest of your career with her. You sound like stupid bickering teenagers, and at the end of the day, you're the one making yourself look worse in this situation if I'm going to be honest. It seems like she has everyone on her side against you, and you punching back hasn't been effective. Please just take this one to HR and try to get her to stop harassing you like this. Everyone sucks here, but she shouldn't be such a bully to you in the first place, and I am genuinely sorry this is happening to you. Now in the comments, Drawing Goblin says, her behavior is inappropriate, your behavior is inappropriate. Grow up and behave like the professionals you are supposed to be. By the way, you are missing a trick here. If you really find the way she treats you to be demeaning, and she genuinely bullies you by saying things like that, spend a few weeks making a note of each comment, the exact time, and who was there to witness it. Then take it to the head of department. All large institutions have pretty ironclad anti-bullying policies, as will her professional organization. She would have to report that she was under investigation for workplace bullying, etc. Exactly. She started it, but mocking a pregnant lady for how her clothes fit is never a good look, and is kind of fodder for a vicious rumor that's going to make you look fully evil. This could spin out of your control fast. If she takes it to HR, it might be very bad for you. They're unlikely to believe you if your excuse is, she started it. Yet another post that makes me wish we had a, you're not the a-hole for what you did, but you sure were dumb, judgment. Did the verbally abusive doctor deserve a taste of her own medicine? Sure. But making fun of a pregnant woman's appearance is one of those instant crap list things. It doesn't matter who was actually right or wrong. Everyone is going to shun the person who mocked the pregnant person. Before, she could have gone to HR with a strong case, but now she's going to go into the meeting as the one getting disciplined or fired. Unfortunately, you can't pay bills with moral righteousness. Sometimes you've just got to grind your teeth when dealing with a bad person and go through the proper channels. Plus, the whole idea of, oh, the other person deserved it, more or less flies out the window when other people have to witness the scene. Whether it's in a workplace, on a bus, or at a family event, when someone is an a-hole to you and you respond in kind, everyone else is intensely uncomfortable just so you can get a zinger in. There are ways to deal with a-holes without being one, and if you're in a public place, you owe it to the people around you to not be another a-hole. Everyone sucks here. Honestly, I'm embarrassed for the both of you. Two grown adults making fun of each other's clothing choices? Gosh. Why, oh why, if this doctor continuously harasses, berates, and insults you in front of your workers and patients, have you not escalated this to HR yet? I totally understand why you're so angry at her, and that's why the comment came out, but you really could do so much more to help yourself here. Everyone sucks here. You did make fun of her for being pregnant, not her shirt. Actually, you made fun of her weight while pregnant, so even worse. Info. I feel like there's more. What started the whole "she hates your guts"? And OP replies, "She shouted at me in front of a patient and said I was too dumb to be a nurse. Even the patient told her to chill out. I stuck up for myself, and ever since then, she's been making my life miserable." Posted by user Imaginary Insurance 50. Titled, "Am I the a-hole for rehoming the pets my mum got me for my birthday?" So I am 17 and a female. My birthday was 2 weeks ago, and my mum got me 3 chinchillas. I had been saving up money through my job to buy my own supplies and chinchillas. I was surprised when my mum handed me the animals on my birthday. I was excited as they're a dream pet of mine. She gave them to me in a really smart travel cage sort of thing. Think one of those really crappy hamster cages that little kids keep their hamsters in. With the money I got for my birthday, including the money that I'd saved up, I had enough to get a multi-level cage and all the supplies and toys that I would need, and still have around $100 or so left. I didn't want to keep the chinchillas in the small cage they came with for long. So after checking over my budget one more time and clearing a space in my room, I told my mom I was heading to the pet store to grab a bigger cage and some supplies. My mom stopped me dead in my tracks and said I wasn't allowed to go. This started an argument between us, and my mum was going on about how she only thought that chinchillas live for a few months, and she didn't want a huge, stinky cage in her house, and how I was wasting my money on something that's probably not going to live that long. Since chinchillas are like a dream pet for me, I've done a lot of research about chinchilla care, and I kept telling her they live for around 10 years and need lots of room to play. But she kept saying, well, in the pet store, they said they'd be fine in that cage that I got you. Or, in the wild, they don't live that long. I'm sure they get eaten anyway. It got really frustrating for me, since I want to be a responsible owner and care for the animals properly. But my mum kept insisting that I was being overdramatic. Since I wasn't allowed to get the stuff I need for the chinchillas, I told my mum I was going to rehome them. She went off and called me dramatic, selfish, ungrateful, and rude. My dad came home later that day and told me I should apologize to my mum and keep my pets, and also that I was being unreasonable and acting like an a-hole towards my mum. I refused to apologize to my mum and got into contact with a friend of mine who I knew takes great care of her chinchillas and had an extra cage. I offered her the animals, and she took them and paid me. I went home and tried to give the money to my mum to pay her back, and she got mad and called me an ass and said I was ungrateful and acting like a terrible daughter. Am I the ass for hurting my mum's feelings? I mean, like, for sure you hurt her feelings by doing this and quote-unquote got rid of the present she gave you, but dear lord, that pales in comparison to the toxic drivel that she's spewing. She's so out of touch with reality when it comes to basic care for animals and lifespans of all things. I can't imagine that doesn't translate to your daily life with her. Your dad also sucks in this situation for enabling her behavior and not realizing how disgusting his partner's views on these animals are. Shame on them. OP, not the a-hole for this one, and thank you for helping those poor chinchillas out. Now in the comments, 9OKM says, not the a-hole. Whoa, your mum scares me a bit. I got pets assuming they'd be dead in a few months, and now that you're telling me that's not the case, I want to find a way to make sure it happens anyway. Yikes, 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 yikes. Yikes is right. You'd think she'd be happy that you decided to get rid of them, after finding out they weren't about to die. Right? The mum sounds psychopathic. She puts you in a no-win situation, then calls you ungrateful and other names. These people have no respect for pets. Also, a larger cage is likely to be less stinky than a tiny one, especially with regular cleanings. OP's solution in no way affects the mum, yet she's making a big deal of it. This post pissed me off a lot more than most posts on this subreddit. Not the a-hole. The fact the dad thinks OP is the one being unreasonable. What the hell? Not the a-hole. OP's dad was probably using OP as a meat shield from his crazy wife, to be honest. I'm so impressed with OP and how she stood up to both her parents to do the right thing, even when it meant giving up the pets she had really wanted. OP, you're a good person, you should be very proud of yourself. Those little chinchillas were lucky to have you for the short time they did. Not the a-hole. The welfare of the animals was the top priority here. It seems like your mum forgot that these were living creatures and not toys. Even if they did only live a few months, they would have deserved to live those months in a comfortable environment. The fact that she didn't even bother to research them enough to learn how long they live and what kind of habitat they need before buying them for you makes her even more of the a-hole. Your dad is also the a-hole for siding with her on this. Also, a small cage would smell just as bad as a large one, if not worse, due to the animals being crammed together. Our next post is by user MisfitMama8766, titled, Am I the a-hole for not helping my child-free sister pay for a family vacation? Most of my siblings have kids and we wanted to do something special for them after the pandemic ended. I pitched taking them all to Disneyland since my kids love it and their kids have never been. Normally they couldn't afford the trip, but I decided to pitch in and help them out. I feel like my little nieces and nephews deserved it after being cooped up inside for a year. My child-free sister was also invited, but she couldn't afford it. She found out I was helping the others and asked if I could help her out as well, which I declined. She's been bitter towards me since, saying I was trying to exclude her from the family, etc. Am I the asshole for not wanting to pay all this extra money to bring her on a trip to Disneyland meant for the children? She doesn't even like hanging out with the kids. I'm fine if she comes, but I just don't want to pay for it. Info. I'm paying for my nieces and nephews by splitting the trip cost 50-50 with each of my siblings. I pitched this as a vacation to cheer up the kids after they've been stuck inside all year because of the pandemic. Info 2, childless sister is 26, she lives with roommates and works as a waitress. And info 3, okay, to all the people telling me I invited her to this trip knowing she can't afford it, like, no? She heard about the trip and I told her she's free to come along if she wants because I'd be fine either way. Alright, before people jump on the you're the a-hole train for this one, this was 50-50 for the kids. It's confusing because in the post it says my child-free sister was also invited but she couldn't afford it. Then in info 3 she says that she heard about the trip and I told her she's free to come along if she wants. So I think the crux of the issue is, yes, this 26-year-old child-free sister isn't entitled to go 50-50 with OP's money, and that the siblings that are going with this OP are not doing 50-50, just the children are doing 50-50. I feel like that's really clear from the post, but a lot of people on Reddit are getting it the wrong way. So I'm gonna have to go not the a-hole for this one. Seems pretty clear to me, and if the 26-year-old childless sister doesn't want to come on the trip, she doesn't have to come on the trip. Now in the comments, Otaku Ninja 1311 says, "You're the a-hole. You won't help her because she doesn't have kids, but you invited her even though you knew she couldn't afford it, and then decided not to help her anyway? Jeez, I can't express this enough. You're the a-hole. And OP added that they didn't invite the sister. That doesn't change much in my opinion. Still an a-hole. Exactly this. I see a lot of reactions from people saying it's OP's money so they can decide what to do with it. I think an adult locked up inside deserves a vacation just as much, or even a little more. Why pay for the siblings but exclude her like that? That's not a family vacation. At least offer her the same 50-50 option. But the 50-50 option is only for the kids, not OP's siblings. Her sister doesn't have kids to offer the 50-50 option for. If the sister is struggling with money issues, why shouldn't OP offer her the same option? What does not having kids have to do with that? Imagine being an adult in pandemic times, having financial problems, and being excluded from much-needed vacations because you don't have kids. Doesn't seem right to me. Except, that's not what's happening. The other siblings have to pay their own way. OP isn't technically giving them anything, so they're in the same boat if you think about it. I have a problem with people thinking they're entitled to someone else's generosity. There's nothing wrong with OP deciding to do something nice for the kids in the family. It's like if she decided to buy each of the kids a toy, and the 26-year-old sister showed up and said, "Where's mine?" Moreover, OP mentioned the sister doesn't even like hanging out with the kids. As usual, I disagree with the vast majority of Reddit. Strong, not the a-hole from me. No, the comment has been deleted for being uncivil now, but OP is helping pay for the parents' costs as well, not just their kids. Edit to add, that's OP's right of course, but since she's willing to pay for the other adults, AITA, you're the a-hole for me. You're the a-hole, OP. I get what your position is. You pitched a vacation geared towards the kids and helping the families with kids afford it. The only reason any of your siblings are going is because you subsidized their trip. And the only reason you're not subsidizing her is because she doesn't have kids. So why punish her for something like that? If this trip is truly about the kids, then helping their aunt afford it so she can spend some time bonding with them on a memory-making vacation would be a much more thoughtful action. Edit. After OP provided more info, OP, would it really be that big of a deal to subsidize 50% of your sister's expenses so she can be there? Again, I get that you're doing this for the kids, but you invited your sister and didn't offer any help for her, knowing she's a waitress and probably couldn't afford it. I again refer you to the point that nobody would be going if you weren't helping them, so why even invite her in the first place? It's clear you can afford to split the trip 50-50 with everyone else. Why cause the rift? I think you're still 100% the a-hole and actively forcing a divide between your sister and the rest of the family by not including her equally just because she hasn't started a family yet. She's a waitress who may not have been able to afford it at the best of times, but after a year of being a waitress during a pandemic? Exactly. OP should offer to help her sister based on what she arranged with the other siblings. Not the a-hole. Bring on the downvotes. Of course, there is a double standard. They are children, your sister is an adult. Like, I get that Reddit likes to think of children just as short adults, but they aren't, and there's nothing wrong with them getting extra attention and consideration over grown-ass people. Sometimes I get birthday gifts from my siblings, sometimes I don't. My kid and nibblings always get multiple gifts and special treats for their birthdays from everyone. But I don't get jealous or upset by it. I pack drinks and snacks on family outings for the kids, and the adults are welcome to if they want, but they also have the ability to run to the gas station any time to grab something. So I'm not concerned that I don't pack adult-friendly things. At the end of the day, this was a plan meant to cheer up the kids, not a family vacation for everyone that OP then turned into a trip for just the kids. If sister was younger, she probably would have been included as one of the kids. She can be upset at missing out, but don't try to ruin it for the kiddos. Our next post is by user Jerry the HVC Guy, titled, Am I the a-hole for asking my emotionally fragile daughter, 16 female, to take a paternity test to help me in court? So my wife and I are finally going through a divorce after living separated for almost 4 years. We didn't do this sooner because we both separated our finances and co-parented amicably, and didn't want to waste the money. We originally separated after I confronted her on multiple affairs, but I wasn't mad, just happy to be done with it. Our daughter was not fazed too much by the transition at first, because we tried to make it as easy as possible on her. However, just 2 months after I moved out, my wife moved a boyfriend into our house and made daughter very uncomfortable, so she decided to live with me the majority of the time instead. Wife has since been very irresponsible about bringing men around daughter. When the pandemic hit, my business boomed while my wife lost her job and had to start working at a grocery store instead. Wife finally decided to file for divorce and take me for what I was worth, as I was now making way more than her. I'm not gonna lie, things went from meditation to a hostile divorce very quickly when she requested more custody and money than I thought she was entitled to. Ultimately, wife was unwilling to admit to her affairs, and I threatened to get a paternity test for our daughter to prove her infidelity. I had suspicions before about the paternity of my daughter, but never acted on them because I didn't want to lose her. This was a mistake because this caused my wife to reveal to daughter that she was an affair baby. Moreover, she told our daughter that if I found out that she was an affair baby, then I would do unspeakable things to her. Wife told daughter all of this to try to get her out of my home and drive a wedge in a relationship. This has caused my daughter to be distant to me and paranoid and emotionally a wreck for months, and I didn't know why. After talking to my lawyer and getting assurance my parental rights would not be affected by a paternity test, I decided to ask my daughter to take it. I sat her down and explained that it was just to prove her mum's infidelity and that she was still my daughter. Unfortunately, before I could tell her much of anything, she had a full-on panic attack and locked herself in her room. Eventually, her favorite auntie, my sister, came to pick her up, and she's now living with her family. My aunt is the one who informed me of the things that my wife said. Daughter and I have been going to counseling, and daughter plans to come to live with me again. Court also ordered wife not to contact daughter, and my lawyer thinks we will do well. But my sister thinks I'm an a-hole for asking my daughter for the test. But the time to prove my wife's infidelity was running out, and I thought my relationship with my daughter was stronger than just genetics. Am I the a-hole for asking my emotionally fragile daughter for a paternity test? Daughter and I never took test, but I was able to prove infidelity in other ways. No, I don't think you're the a-hole for doing that at all. There's no way you could have known what your ex had been telling your daughter for all that time, and she's a piece of crap for involving her so heavily in this divorce. I can't imagine the amount of damage she's done to this poor child just to get back at you and get some more money from you. I'm glad things are going better now, and I hope things continue to improve with your daughter. You're a good man, OP, not the a-hole. Now in the comments, me reading the title, yes, you obviously are. Me reading the whole post, holy heck, no, you are absolutely not the a-hole. Lesson learned, read things properly, people. Not the a-hole. It was in your daughter's best interest for you to get custody and not pay more than necessary in alimony. It's 100% understandable that she freaked out and didn't see it that way. X is obviously the a-hole for forcing you into that position in the first place. I really wish that OP had not made this request his first acknowledgement of the elephant in the room. I wish he had sat her down and had a conversation about it first, in which he made it clear that her genetic origins will not change their bond. I wish he had given her space to cry and feel her feelings and ask him questions as needed. I wish he had not opened with, I want you to take a paternity test. I cannot imagine what a gut punch that must have been. Asking her to do this before they've had a chance to process the likelihood that she's not his biological child together was too much too soon. And I'm not the least bit surprised that she completely panicked. I don't think OP is the a-hole, but man, that doesn't mean he handled this well. I really wish all those things too, but it's important to remember he didn't know the things we know. about what her mother had been telling her, and he didn't have the faintest idea. He could have handled it the way you describe anyway, just from knowing it was a sensitive subject, and he should have, but I can understand why he was blindsided. Not the a-hole. The monster is your wife. She poisoned your daughter's mind, and now you are both paying the price. But instead of framing it as a paternity test, you should have simply gotten her a full genetic screening through a site like 23andMe. They give you extensive reports about potential health conditions, so it would have been much easier to frame it in a context of something that you're doing for the sake of health, rather than something you're doing to prove that her mom was sleeping around. Not admissible in court, and the OP needs to prove infidelity. It's also disingenuous, and the last thing OP's daughter needs is to feel like her father betrayed her trust. And our next post is by user Throwaway37282, titled, "Am I the a-hole for threatening to kick out my sister-in-law after she became vegan?" Now, I know the title sounds bad, but hear me out. I, 32 female, am currently divorcing my soon-to-be ex-husband, 38 male. Even though we're not together anymore, I'm still very close to his sister, 27 female. Let's call her A. A lost her job during the pandemic and couldn't pay rent anymore, so I let her move in since I have a pretty big house that's mostly unused since my husband moved out. I don't want any money for it, but since she's staying at home 24/7 and I'm working a 50-hour job, we made an agreement that she makes food for us too. It all worked out perfectly until 2 days ago, she said she wants to go vegan and won't cook meat anymore. Now, hear me out. I regularly have to lift heavy objects at my job, so I need the meat to stay in shape. Also, this is my house, and I don't want to be forced into a diet I don't want. I started shouting at her and said she can pack her things and get the hell out if she doesn't change her mind. She started crying and calling me a psycho. Yesterday, her parents called and told me that I was too harsh with her and am the a-hole. I even got an angry text message from my husband about how evil I am and blah blah. However, I think I'm in the right. Am I the a-hole? You think it's normal just to start shouting and telling her you can get the hell out of my house because you're not gonna cook meat? You're really gonna burn that bridge because she's not gonna cook meat for you? I think this divorce is hitting you harder than you realize. You woke up today and you chose violence when that text message came through. Like, just because she's going vegan doesn't mean that you have to. You realize that's a choice, right? She can make the meal for you, and then you just cook some food. You don't just have to kick it into gear and go full psycho angry mode telling her to get the hell out if she doesn't change her mind. You were too harsh in this situation. It got around so much that your husband texted you to tell you how evil you were. How are you still so in denial about this? Please reevaluate your decisions and your life choices from here. You're the a-hole. Now in the comments, OKSympathy6395 says, I started shouting at her and said she can pack her things and get the hell out if she doesn't change her mind. She started crying and calling me a psycho. Friend, are you like, okay? I'm gonna say you're the a-hole here because you made zero attempts to have any kind of calm conversation about readjusting your agreement. Maybe she could start paying rent or clean instead if she can't continue to cook for you? Or maybe it's time to make an amicable end to this arrangement. But starting to shout at her for changing her diet is just ridiculous. She's allowed to become vegan and you're allowed to kindly and calmly discuss with her whether or not that will work for you. Not to mention that sister-in-law being vegan doesn't mean OP has to be. I'm mostly vegan, and I usually just grill up a chicken breast or a bit of fish to put on top of my meal for my husband. You're the a-hole, but not for wanting to eat meat. The way you reacted makes you the a-hole. It was not necessary to shout at and threaten her living situation over her desire to change her own diet. Posted by user, Am I the a-hole Bridezilla or not? Titled, Am I the a-hole for insisting my fiancé's parents can't come to our wedding? Hi all. I, 27 female, dislike my fiancé's, 28 male, parents. Over the years, they've come to hate me as well. Fiancé, Kay, and I met in college. He was already low contact with his parents when we met. They are boundary stompers. Kay's mum was pretty disgusting and weird with him growing up, and his dad is an alcoholic. Kay has let them stay in his life on an information diet and with boundaries. Background. A few years ago, we'd planned to spend Christmas with my parents. They argued with us about this for a month. Kay's mum started calling me several times a day, crying on the phone, begging me to come for Christmas. Kay told his sister what date we were leaving, and she told them. They showed up at 1 a.m. with their suitcases and said they had spent all night driving and they were here for the holidays. I told Kay that I'd handle it, and I told them that they would not be coming inside. They whined about having driven hours, and it was too late to get a hotel. I told them to sleep on the street then. I was sick of their BS. They were not going to control my life like they had controlled their sons growing up. They asked what I meant. I called them awful parents who were lucky Kay was so forgiving to even talk to them still. They insisted on coming inside and talking to Kay. I told them to F off, and if they weren't gone in 10 minutes, I would call the cops. Then I slammed the door. Kay thought what I said was hilarious. He never heard the end of this though, and they've tried to get him to dump me since. Anyways, the situation. We are close with Kay's little sister, M, and his brother-in-law, and we were having dinner with them. M joked about Kay's mum wearing a white dress. I said, yeah, which is why Kay's parents won't be at our wedding. M, shocked, began an interrogation. Kay backed me up and said his parents are prone to hysterics, get too drunk at gatherings, and are too draining to have there. M accused me of forcing this decision onto Kay. Kay said he didn't want them at the reception and was considering having them at the ceremony. I said it was a conversation for later between Kay and I, but that they would have not been at the reception no matter what. M freaked out and said this would ruin our relationship with our in-laws forever. And at this point, brother-in-law agreed. M called me a ruthless bear, said this would cause too much family drama, and that we're being self-centered a-holes. Here's where I might be the a-hole. I told M it's not my fault that her and brother-in-law were too chicken crap to ever set boundaries with them, that they let mother-in-law make their wedding about her, and if my in-laws weren't such awful human beings, then this wouldn't be an issue. I also said that if their mum didn't want to be on the altar with K2, I'd be less against having them there. M and brother-in-law left. I texted her, apologizing, and she said she'll forgive me if I invite my future in-laws. Kay and I talked more, and we still agree on them not being there, but I feel awful. I would hate to ruin our relationship with her and brother-in-law. Am I the a-hole? Edit. Hi everyone. I appreciate everyone who's replied and for all the judgments. I wanted to add in some information, as originally I didn't think it was relevant to the conflict, but it's getting brought up a lot in the comments section. Question. Why are you the one dealing with the in-laws? / you're steamrolling your fiancé / he needs to handle them. I'm not the one who maintains communication or boundaries with my in-laws. My fiancé has been the one to set every boundary. He was the one who would tell them that we were leaving a gathering due to their behavior, stood his ground to his in-laws repeatedly on demands, told them that we would go no contact if they kept it up, etc. When his mother would call me to try and force us to visit, he would answer the phone and let her know that it was inappropriate to call me to try and manipulate me. He went low contact with them before meeting me and was financially independent from them from 18 onwards. The first time I got involved was when they showed up at our door at 1 a.m, pounding on our door and windows, telling us we didn't have to go see my parents anymore. Kay fully supported what I said and was behind me in not allowing them into our home. The reason I dealt with them that day was because he was undressed, and mother-in-law would have gone into hysterics if she'd saw him undressed, and we wanted him out as quickly as possible. I have never handled communication with his parents or spoke for both of us to his sister. Kay was a large part of the conversation a few nights ago. However, I was asking if I was the a-hole, not if my fiancé was. OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the a-hole. I think I might be the a-hole for the way I dropped this on M at dinner, for the way I insulted my in-laws to M and brother-in-law, and that I'm unwilling to compromise with M on having them there because I view it as our wedding, our guest list, even though M is family. Honestly, I think M being family is besides the point here. They've been boundary stomping, they've been crazy, they've pushed the line so many times. I think you're allowed to say what you want about them. I feel like that should be okay, and you're not an a-hole for talking out against it. So my judgment on this one is not the a-hole. These people seem genuinely crazy, they will not take no for an answer, and they have a history of abusing your partner. They have absolutely no sympathy from me. Screw these parents, you don't need them in your life. Not the a-hole. Now in the comments, One Mike Nation says, everyone sucks here. The parents suck, but honestly the way you talk to his family is disgusting. And OP replies, thank you for the judgment. I definitely could have been kinder to M. After some reflection, I was just really mad with what she had said. And after talking with Kay, I realized I hold some resentment towards her. She's the reason we're not no contact with his parents, as she begged us not to cut them off several times because it would make things a lot harder on her, as they financially support her. In regards to what I said to his parents when they showed up at 1 a.m., I stand by what I said, and I'll explain a bit more. They're awful people who had been showing up at our apartment, insulting my family, breaking boundaries, etc. for about 3 years at that point, and I'd never said anything prior to that. I also hold a lot of ill will for how awful they were to Kay growing up. Being woken up at 1 a.m. by them, when they intentionally planned to ruin our holiday after we had firmly told them no, was just too much. Kay has always been great dealing with them. They just don't accept boundaries. If we had the money to pay off M's debt to them, we would, and we plan to once we're able. I disagree with One Mike Nation's judgment. M set the boundaries in the argument. While what you said was a little extreme, M insulted you first. According to your post, she called you a ruthless tramp when you said you wouldn't be inviting your in-laws, who you clearly have a problem with because of their lack of respect. I'm not justifying what you said, but M did disrespect you. Also, you should go no contact with Kay's parents. They will either change or you will get rid of bad people. It's a win-win. Edit. Also in your post, you said that M told Kay's parents when you would be leaving. She clearly seems like she doesn't care about your boundaries either. I suggest uninviting her too. And also, I don't know how M can be so oblivious to her parents. When she found out that Kay's parents wouldn't be invited, she didn't even consider the possibility that Kay didn't want them to come. She instantly blamed you. I don't understand why she would think Kay wants his horrible parents at his wedding. And Morally Applicable says, not the a-hole. Your fiancé's parents sound like narcissists, and M has absolutely no say in your wedding. It seems like she's more mad at the fact that you and Kay are setting the boundaries she was too scared to set, and thinks that you should all suffer, and less about not having your in-laws at the wedding. It was kind of an a-hole move to point that out though, but you're not the a-hole for not caving to emotional blackmail. Forgiveness doesn't come with strings attached. Showing up at your door at 1 a.m. demanding to be let in is ridiculous and a good reason to go no contact, much less contact. And our next post is by user Winamdoes, titled, Am I the a-hole for making a punny wall of shame for people who stole from my mum's garden? So my mum is really into gardening, and sometimes people have come by and stole potted plants, yard statuettes, and even dug whole plant bulbs with plants out of the ground. Or just cut all of the roses off her bushes because they were too cheap to buy from the florist, I guess. Anyway, my dash cam of my car, which I park in the driveway near the garden bed, caught most all of them close up, and as a way to help my mum not have her plants stolen, I printed all of their pictures out and made a poster that said, "Oh, hey there! Don't be a daffodil and steal, or else you might end up doing hard time. We hope this'll be a lesson to you." And I put the pictures of everyone stealing from the garden around the border. Also gave each person a funny fake name. Mr. Potato Head, Dilettante, Pothead, Prick, Sucker, I Peony in my pants, Frondless, Dirtbag, Infertile, and Root Boy. I thought it was funny and cutesy. Like, how can you be offended with dumb plant puns? My mum thought it was hilarious and wanted me to hang it up because she was sick of seeing stuff stolen. But I got a couple complaints. One neighbor said I needed to take it down because I had a picture of his son, a minor, who did something dumb, yes, but was just trying to bring his sick girlfriend flowers, and that it was disproportionate and rude to publicly shame him. I told him that it wasn't that big of a deal, and he told me that I was being petty. I called his kid a little birch, which ticked him off and honestly might have been petty. Another guy came to the house and returned a cutting his wife had apparently took to propagate, thinking it would be no big deal. But yeah, it damaged the plant because she cut like a quarter off, and he asked if we would take down the sign because she was on the board of directors or something from the town or whatever. My mum had answered the door and told him to make like a bee and buzz off. Anyways, I guess they both know each other, and now both of these families are annoyed. Am I the a-hole for making a petty sign about people stealing from my mum's garden, hoping to get them to stop? I think just because two people complained, it doesn't mean that your actions here were disproportionate. These people felt bad about their actions, one even returned the plant as a result of being called out publicly. It's even better that you made more punny, stupid, rude jokes about them and that guy's son when they came to confront you about it. That's just amazing. Though if this woman's going to get offended because she's on the board of directors and she wants to keep her reputation, squeaky clean, maybe she shouldn't be stealing from people's gardens. Maybe you should just show that you're a good person and not destroy other people's property. That would be a good start, and I think she absolutely deserves to be called out like that. So, OP, not the a-hole for this one. They all deserved that. Now, in the comments, the Space Mambo says, not the a-hole. These people stole. That's a crime. And instead of pressing charges or whatever, you have created something truly delightful. I wish I were half as clever as you because I'd come up with a pun of my own. Not only are you not an a-hole, you're also my hero. Jumping on top comment to agree. If you don't want your photo displayed, refrain from stealing the plants. If you don't want your photos displayed but you would like to continue stealing the plants, we can press charges in place of displaying your photo. The choice is yours. Not the a-hole. If they don't like it, they can get Clover it. Could always mark people off of the sign too, as they apologize. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be difficult for someone to attack the garden from out of view of the cameras. They could spray something harmful from afar. They may also have a better idea of where the camera's blind spots are due to the pictures of them and others. Personally, I see it as they did a crappy thing and OP got them back for it. Now they've expressed they're angry about the sign, and you never know when someone might feel justified in doing something stupid over their own ego. I would exercise caution in developing enemies for a garden that people clearly have easy access to, if you want your plants to do well, that is. But this really does sound like a hilarious way to call people out for stealing from someone's property. Sounds like some of these people are ruining the garden, and not just taking a flower here and there. To the parent complaining about his son's picture being there, he should have his son apologize to your mum in order to get his picture down. Maybe even have the son bring your mum some flowers. Parents can buy some if he can't, as a way to show that he's actually sorry. Going straight to how it's public shaming instead of telling his son not to steal from other people is kind of funny. I doubt your mum would have minded if the kid said he wanted a couple flowers for his sick girlfriend, as long as he actually asked her first. Posted by user Automatic Cricket 71. Titled, Am I the a-hole for bringing out regular bread when a pregnant woman ordered garlic-free garlic bread? So I'm a waitress at a restaurant. Earlier, a pregnant woman came in with her husband. When I went to get their orders, the woman asked for garlic-free garlic bread. I advised her that our garlic bread was just our regular bread with garlic butter instead of regular butter, and asked her to clarify if she just wanted regular bread. But she insisted no. She wanted our garlic bread just without garlic. I let her know she could just order regular bread and it would be $1 less, but she insisted she had a huge craving for garlic bread without the garlic. I wasn't really sure what to do, but her husband got angry and said something like, "Can't you see that she's pregnant? It's not that hard to just bring out garlic bread without garlic." So I took their order and told the kitchen she wanted garlic bread without garlic. Kitchen staff thought I was being snarky, but brought out the regular bread for her. She immediately starts crying and asking me if I was treating her like an idiot. How could I treat a pregnant woman so badly? Is it that hard to make garlic bread without garlic? But literally, we do nothing different to our garlic bread except use garlic butter instead of regular butter. Her husband flagged down a manager, telling me that I was being condescending and that his wife had been craving this all week, but garlic was making her nauseous. The manager came over, and I explained what was going on. The manager apologized and took the bread back and told me to just bring out another loaf of bread with garlic butter on the side. I was a little annoyed, but I did it, and gave it to them. The husband got angry again, told the manager I was being intentionally difficult and cruel, then left with his wife, who ate the garlic-free garlic bread using the garlic butter. This just feels bizarre to me. Both me and my manager weren't really sure how to handle this. Am I the a-hole for bringing out regular bread when the woman ordered garlic-free garlic bread? Edit. To clarify, it's a focaccia loaf. The regular and garlic bread are baked the exact same way. It's just that one uses garlic and the other doesn't. I just saw a meme where they said focaccia funny and I thought it would be funny to say. Edit 2, to clarify further, the lady says she had been to the restaurant before. She was completely aware of what our garlic bread contained. She was specifically craving our garlic bread, which is a flat focaccia with salt, herbs, butter, and garlic. Our regular bread is the exact same thing with no garlic, so it has the salt, herbs, and butter. They are both served warm. The bread isn't toasted like Texas toast-style garlic bread. The focaccias are pretty flat, so you can't really toast it, but the crust is still pretty crunchy and buttery. I mean, what? What the hell's going on? Am I going crazy? I feel like it's just ridiculous that they requested that, then made a huge fuss of it when they got exactly what they'd requested. Like, what the hell do they actually want from this place? You either get the garlic butter on there or not. Maybe you just get normal butter on there. Maybe she wanted that, but her brain just couldn't say it. Like, they yelled at OP, and they called them and the manager terrible at their jobs. I really don't think I'm missing anything in this situation. I feel like something was just going on with this couple that night. They weren't happy together, so they went and took it out on waiters. Is that what's going on here? Because I'm very lost and confused how they continued to get so upset when there is no alternative. Whatever they're asking for either didn't exist, or they were just really confused, high on some crazy drugs. I don't have an answer for that one. I'm gonna go with not the a-hole. Screw those people, what's their problem? Now in the comments, Significant Onion 21 says, "Lol, no, not the a-hole. There was literally no way to satisfy her in this situation, it appears. Pregnancy isn't an excuse for her here. Some patrons are just gonna be like that." It sounds like maybe she wanted the bread toasted with butter, but not garlic. Not the a-hole for not understanding her unclear request, though. She made asking for toast needlessly complicated then, lol. Isn't there a thing called pregnancy brain, where hormones make someone think like a toenail clipping? Not excusing, cause somebody pregnant probably should be aware of that, just inquisitive. And edit, it's pretty interesting hearing the different takes on this. Like, in that case, isn't it on the husband to get her point across clearly, instead of also being a dense a-hole about it? Wife: "Honey, I want garlic bread, but no garlic." Husband: "Oh, sorry miss, she's pregnant, she means toasted bread with melted butter." Server: "Oh, no worries sir, I'll go get that for ya." I'd bet real money the husband had already been through the whole wash, rinse, spin cycle on this several times over. It's like that movie The Ring. The garlic-free garlic bread problem was his until he passed it along. But of course, he can't risk shattering the illusion by trying to explain it to the server in a way that would fix the problem. He has to be fully invested in her impossible goal in order for it to work. That's just so effing stupid. I'm sorry, that's just really dumb then. If that's genuinely the case, that makes me angry to hear it. Not the a-hole, but I'm pregnant, and after reading this, I'm desperate for garlic bread with garlic. So you're the a-hole for making me hungry, crying laughing emoji. Not the a-hole, they're asking you for an item that does not exist. The customer is not always right, especially when they demand that you make a square circle. Yeah, what? I'm pregnant, and I think she and her husband are just being unreasonable. It's like asking for a glass of water without water and having a tantrum when you're given an empty cup. Growing a baby doesn't make contradictions that can't exist suddenly work somehow. If she just wanted toasted bread with butter or something, it's on her for not being able to explain what she was talking about. Getting louder and more aggressive does not actually improve your chances of anyone understanding you. And our next post is by user JennyJenny8675, titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my daughter that she's getting what she deserves? So I, 58 male, have 2 daughters, one from a previous marriage and another from my wife's previous marriage. Both daughters are around the same age, think mid-20s. My daughter Allie has never gotten along with her stepsister Johanna. If Johanna invited Allie to a movie, Allie was suddenly super busy and had no time. If Johanna wanted to come with Allie to a party, Johanna wasn't invited and there was no way she could bring her. She'd rip up Johanna's things and would blame Johanna when she got grounded. Just the run-of-the-mill petty teenager bull stink. Johanna was a good sport and always seemed to take things on the chin. Her explanation was always that sisters fight. Until about maybe 3 or 4 summers ago, Allie was home from college and was going through a rough breakup that was causing her grades to tank, which put her on academic probation. Allie was upset and was taking it out on everyone, especially Johanna. My wife and I told her to cut it out, and she seemed to catch on that her behavior wasn't going to be accepted. Come to find out, after Allie leaves to go back to college, that she had completely destroyed Johanna's scrapbook with her pictures of her dad and destroyed a lot of the shirts that she'd left of his. Johanna didn't make a stink about it in front of us, but that night the house stunk of E6000 and Mod Podge. You could guess what she spent the night doing. After that incident, Johanna had completely given up on Allie. Allie has a birthday coming up. Johanna wouldn't even sign the card. Allie is in town for the weekend, and unless it's a holiday or a family event, Johanna wasn't there. And honestly, we didn't blame her. Now, the issue is that Allie wants Johanna to let things go and let bygones be bygones. Johanna is getting married soon, and Allie wants an invite. It was brought up this past week at a family dinner. Johanna and her fiancé, as well as their son, attended. Allie and her wife and 2 girls attended as well. Allie brought up how the kids were the same age and how it'd be cool after the wedding if the kids could hang out. Allie also asked what she could wear to Johanna's wedding and if she'd be a bridesmaid. Johanna pretty much laid it out for Allie that she wasn't coming and that the kids wouldn't be seeing each other outside of family events. The night was pretty tense afterwards, and I asked Johanna if there was any way she could forgive Allie. She said she wanted nothing to do with her, and I told her I fully understand that she carries a lot of hurt from how Allie treated her. Allie came to me after Johanna left and pretty much begged me to convince Johanna to move past things. I told her that had she been a more considerate and kind person back then, that maybe she'd have a chance at a relationship with her stepsister. I told her that she made her bed and she needs to lay in it. She said I'm an a-hole and that any good father would want to see his kids reunite. Am I the a-hole for telling her she deserves this? And info, for everyone asking and making assumptions about my parenting, Ali was never allowed to slide with anything she did to her sister. She was grounded, she had things taken from her, we replaced the things that she broke, and we made sure Johanna was supported and validated throughout the years. We never told Johanna to get over anything. We never told her that she had to forgive Ali. When we offered Ali therapy, she was 14. We weren't going to force our daughter to go to therapy where chances were she could just tell her therapist that she didn't want to be there and be uncooperative, and most likely have the therapist stop seeing her, as we can't and we're not going to force a kid to be somewhere she didn't want to be just for her to lash out at her sister even worse. When Ali destroyed those things, she was banned from coming back until she apologized and made things right by Johanna. Johanna said herself that she didn't want the apology, and my wife and I did our best to surround her with love while she was grieving the loss of those things that she cared for. Johanna moved out, so the punishment was moot. We're aware that Ali sucks, we did everything that we could within reason. I didn't raise Ali to be this way. We didn't encourage this, nor did we allow her to believe the behavior was acceptable. Look, that edit kind of seals the deal. A lot of people down in the comments were saying everyone sucks here because the parents weren't doing anything, they never stepped in, they never stopped Ali doing what she was going to be doing there, which was a lot of bullying to Johanna. And Johanna just took it on the chin, to the point where she took her escape into drugs and sniffing glue, which is that E6000, and I think paint sealer? Whatever Mod Podge is, it's some type of sealer. That's really terrible that Ali inflicted that much pain onto her. All things considered, Ali got off pretty well for all the terrible actions that she did. Even though she did get punished, there were no repercussions. And she's so entitled to the point that she wanted to start a relationship again without properly apologizing or, coming to terms with what she'd done or stopping any of the actions. She was just like, haha, let's move on from this, Johanna. You're gonna forgive me, aren't you? That's really devastating, and Jesus, you don't have to forgive someone that does that to you. Absolutely not. The parents have done everything they could in this situation, but sometimes you do all that you can do and it's not enough, and in this situation it just wasn't. My judgment for this one is not the a-hole. Now in the comments, C Rhapsody says, not the a-hole, given your edits. You did a lot, and I wouldn't have been able to do better. Although maybe I would have had 1 or 2 mandatory therapy sessions where they were minors before giving up on it. Not the a-hole. You don't get to decide when your abuse stops hurting people. You don't get to decide when you should be forgiven. It doesn't sound like she has reformed or sincerely apologized of her own fruition. I think you're a good parent. You tried to get her therapy, you punished her for what she did, and you supported your other daughter. To be honest, this post is refreshing. I see a lot of people saying that their parents are pressuring them to forgive toxic family that aren't sorry and have never apologized. Not the a-hole, and honestly, I don't blame the parents. It sounds like they did all the right things and it just didn't work. They obviously did something right because Johanna sounds awesome and well-adjusted against all odds. The only thing I think they should have done is have Ali checked out for a mental disorder or illness like narcissistic personality disorder or explosive defiant disorder. It sounds to me like she has a mental illness. Posted by user Expecting But Not This, titled, Am I the a-hole for rudely telling my husband I decide who is in the delivery room? So for context, I, 28 female, am currently pregnant with my partner, 31 male, and am a first-time mum. My hospital recently changed their policy and are now allowing 2 support people in the delivery room. My mother-in-law made comments early on that she wanted to be there for the birth, and this woman is not subtle. At the time, I felt protected by CVD protocols, but set that expectation straight. I explicitly stated that any time I give birth, it will be a private medical experience that only includes my husband and medical team. I thought that it was clear it wasn't a debate because it's my body and I have the autonomy to decide who sees it in any context. Additionally, I do not have a good relationship with my mother-in-law. She just recently started initiating positive interactions after years of me trying, and it's absolutely because she's an "it's my grandbaby" kind of person. Recently, my husband told me we needed to have a discussion. He starts off by saying he mentioned the support person protocol changed to his mother. I tried not to react, but I immediately blurted out, asking him why he would do that. He goes on to say he knows his mother really wants to be in the room to see the baby's first breath. I replied logically, if your mom sees their first breath, she will also see me pushing and will be looking down at my vagina. I actually had to explain why I refused to give birth in front of his mother. I then told him that there are only 2 priorities in the delivery room, and neither of them are his or her feelings. The discussion continued back and forth. Finally, I started crying. I told him that labor and birth will be the most painful and vulnerable experience of my life, and that I need him to protect me. I told him that anyone who refuses to protect their pregnant partner failed them and is just dead weight in the delivery room. My husband told me that I'm rude, other negative things too, left our apartment, and when he came back, he wasn't speaking to me. This is where I think I could be the a-hole. I told him giving me this silent treatment, because I won't let his mother spectate as my most intimate area rips open, was very immature and made me worry if he has the emotional intelligence to support me in the delivery room. I think my husband took the hint, but I didn't explicitly say that I can decide that he won't be allowed in there either. I will say that I would be devastated if I had to do that, and never thought this would ever be a problem during my pregnancy. So, am I the a-hole? Info: I did cuss when talking about effing ripping, but that was it. I also wasn't yelling, but I was sobbing loudly enough during it that my neighbor next door knocked to check on me after he left. And edit for added info: I saw some questions. Sorry about not including this originally. I'm a mess currently. I have a mother and 2 sisters, both mums, who I love endlessly, but I didn't ask any of them to be in the delivery room because I only want my husband there. Also, I did not yell at my husband at any point during this interaction. I was sobbing. I didn't lose my cool. In fact, my husband screaming was why my neighbor in the apartment next door heard and came and knocked after he left. She told me when I answered the door, I move slower these days, that she was so glad I answered because she was considering calling the police, or 911. Not sure if those numbers are allowed here, just in case. Edited again. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, everyone. I'm sorry I'm trying to answer all the messages, and thank you endlessly to all the people who shared their personal birth stories with me and offered advice and information. There are some wonderful strangers out there. I see comments worried about my safety. I promise I am safe and will try to provide an update if needed. One update I can predict now: my mother-in-law will not be in my delivery room. I don't think you're an a-hole for that interaction with your husband, and telling him he won't be in the delivery room either if he continues to pressure you for his mother also being in there. That doesn't sound very family-friendly to me, and it sounds like he's very much a kiss-ass for his mother. It's pretty obvious he cares more about her feelings in this situation than yours. So if that's the case, then you gotta make it clear that you won't be bulldozed by either of them. They can't get what they want from you because it's not what you want. Simple as that. If it takes colorful language and imagery to get the point across, then so be it. How dare he go behind your back and tell his mum about the change in rules when he knows goddamn well you're not gonna take that news kindly. Like, that's so incredibly toxic and boneheaded of him to do that. I don't think I'd be able to contain my anger either if I were you. Your husband deserves everything you threw at him and then some in this argument. If he doesn't change his perspective on this, then of course don't let him be there for the birth of his child. You look after yourself, and you're not the a-hole here. Now in the comments, Jammy913 says, not the a-hole. Your husband pulled a moronic move going behind your back to let mother-in-law know she might be able to be in there. That, my dear, is fully 100% up to you. In fact, I think you need to let the staff know that under no circumstances is she allowed in the room. give them a close-up mugshot of her. Not the a-hole. This is insane. Hold your ground, OP. And ask your husband how he'd feel if your dad chaperoned to a future vasectomy. You know, to provide support and coach him through it. Some people need analogies. His vasectomy, partly without pain meds, and it lasts approximately 18 hours, because that's what labor is. Not the a-hole. What is it with all the mother-in-laws in the world suddenly deciding they need to see the birth of their grandchildren? No mother-in-law I've ever met thought they deserved to be in the delivery room. It's completely up to you who is in the room, but beware, she might try to sneak in. Make sure the hospital staff knows it's just you and your husband. Maybe have him watch a video of a live birth so he understands how absolutely vulnerable you will be in that moment. And OP replies, "Thank you for this suggestion, because I was thinking of this, but was worried that I was being over the top. I told him I wanted him to watch a human birth when he brought this up. Now it's required, because honestly, I don't want him in the room if he's so ignorant and uneducated on the process, because then he really will just be dead weight and probably will cause me and the baby stress." So what do you guys think about this one? I feel like the not the a-hole judgment is pretty set in stone, but I'd like to see what you guys think in the comments. Now, our next post is by user Forsaken Succotash, titled, "Am I the a-hole for not covering my scars despite knowing how they affect my stepsister?" So I, 17 male, have a large burn scar on my arm and shoulder. It covers my whole upper arm and shoulder and some of my lower arm. It was from an accident a few years ago. The past few days have been really hot where I live, so I've either been wearing short sleeves or I've been rolling up my sleeves. And today, my stepsister, 20 female, came to visit our dad. I walked into the kitchen wearing shorts and a hoodie with the sleeves rolled up. When my sister was younger and she was living with her mom, the house next to hers caught on fire. The houses were attached and their house also caught on fire, but they got out and were fine. But still, it was a very traumatic experience for her. She can't go near fire or she'll freak out. Understandably so. She saw my scars and told me to roll my sleeves down. I told her no. She told me that I know about her history with fire and that I should be more considerate. I told her that she should be more considerate, considering it's my effing body. She called me a dick for using the whole my body, my rules thing, and that she just asked me to roll my sleeves down. I grabbed a drink from the fridge and went back upstairs. Thinking on it, I kind of feel like the a-hole. I know how fire and fire-related things affect her, and rolling my sleeves down wouldn't have been that hard. So, am I the a-hole? And edits, I've had a few people come into my DMs asking about my accident. I know you guys mean well and just want all the info, but it's something that is really hard for me to talk about, so I would appreciate it if you could not ask me those kinds of questions. This is a hard toss-up because it's always good to be considerate of those with trauma, and trying your best not to trigger those traumatic experiences is the way to go. But asking OP to cover her scars is a bit of a grey area here in all honesty. But I would have to say that she has no right to ask or demand OP cover their burn scars on their body. Like, getting up you for the my body, my rules, being a dick for saying that is just so backwards. I'm doing a 360 and walking away. No, you can't just tell me to respect your body, dude. You're such an asshole. What's wrong with you? Like, that pretty much leads me to thinking OP is not the a-hole in this scenario. Just a really weird thing to say to OP and say they're a dick for defending their choice of clothes. I don't get it. So that's it. I'm going not the a-hole for this one. Now in the comments, Macaroni Rascal 42 says, "Not the a-hole. You are completely correct. Your body, your rules. She's asking you to be uncomfortable for the sake of her comfort, which is not okay." Hopping on to add that while having triggers and being triggered due to traumatic events is understandable and does not make her the a-hole, part of coping and understanding those triggers is to know and manage them. Not actively doing so is the issue here, and asking you to cover up or go away is not managing anything. Not the a-hole. Exactly. OP's not really in the wrong here. You don't need to adjust the whole world to your liking to get over a traumatic experience. There are much better ways to do so. The point of IDing triggers is to better understand your trauma and let people avoid triggers if they need to. But that should never extend to other people's bodies. The absolute most you should ever ask of someone is for a reasonable accommodation. Otherwise, it's on you to take yourself out of, or avoid, situations which you know you cannot handle. Asking someone to cover their body more than what is conventionally acceptable in a swimming pool in their own home is unreasonable. Slight clarification, I used swimming pool level of acceptability, but I should have said more than otherwise would be appropriate for the situation. Don't be the a-hole in a swimsuit at a fancy dinner party, kids. Sadly puts away snorkel and flippers. Not the a-hole. She's traumatized over a near miss, but has no consideration for someone who wasn't that fortunate? Time for Miss Thing to grow up. Although I agree with your verdict, OP's sister can be traumatized over being in a fire. I was in a really bad fire a few years ago, and I ended up going to therapy to address my night terrors and panic attacks triggered by sirens, smoke, etc. She doesn't need scars to prove she was traumatized. However, she is the a-hole because she isn't learning to cope or seeking coping mechanisms to deal with her triggers. Knowing your triggers is important, but she can't control everything or everyone. She needs to learn to manage herself. Edit with the verdict, not the a-hole. It's your damn body. You've also been scarred literally by fire. You should not be made to feel ashamed of it. I was just about to say this. She may have seen fire, but it's actually touched and hurt him. Her trauma of witnessing a house burn down is nowhere near the same. What if he asked her to stop coming over or cover her face because her fire story reminds him of what happened to him? It would be viewed as a ridiculous statement. She should seek help for the issues of open flames, but that doesn't mean OP's discomfort is less important than hers. OP doesn't have to feel ashamed nor discomforted by his body. Our next post is by user Am I the A-hole throw 34909, titled, Am I the a-hole for showing my daughter the text her fiancé sent me? So I'm a widower with two 23-year-old biological daughter, 17-year-old stepson Adam, kids, and my late wife passed away 2 years ago, leaving me to care for Adam, disabled, wheelchair-bound, and his sister loves him. She always visits and checks in on him. But her fiancé Mike and I do not get along because of how he behaves around us. Unlike us, Mike comes from a prosperous family, and they always tend to show off what they have. Mike treats my daughter very well, but acts as if me and my family were less than. He doesn't eat nor drink anything at my house. He and his mom make comments about our living space and constantly brag about what his family has. My daughter was visiting and said she wanted me and her brother to be at the wedding to share her day. The day I received the invitation, Mike called and expressed how he and his family weren't thinking Adam's presence at his sister's wedding was necessary. He went on about his family's upper-class guests and how Adam's presence would feel out of place, and suggested I come alone. I told him my daughter said she wanted Adam there, but he kept coming up with suggestions till we started arguing. I checked with my daughter to clear any misunderstanding. Mike then said Adam could come. I then got a text from him talking about how it's his wedding, so I needed to stop sticking my nose where it doesn't belong. He mentioned my son isn't technically family anyway, so it wouldn't matter if he's uninvited, claiming I was trying to be mean on purpose to make it hard because I don't like him. He finished by saying that this is my fair warning, and that if I chose to make my son's presence at the wedding my hill to die on, then I just signed away any rights to any future grandchildren he and my daughter will have. That was it. He kept calling, but I blocked him. I invited my daughter to my home to tell her I won't attend if my son won't. She asked what happened. I showed her the text Mike sent me. She was shocked, she said nothing, and just took a picture of it and left. My sister came the next day saying the wedding was off after a huge argument between Mike and my daughter because of me. They argued that I created this problem when I showed my daughter the text, and I could have respected the groom's rules since it's his wedding, but I was being controlling for not wanting my daughter to be happy. They went on about Mike being high class, a man with a salary, his own car, and a house. More relatives were saying that they would have had someone watch Adam if this was the issue, but it wasn't. They claimed it was then because of my resentment towards Mike. Mike just sounds like an all-round terrible person, and I can't blame you for standing up for Adam. Adam absolutely deserves to be at that wedding. Who the hell is Mike to say he's not allowed to be there when he's trying to keep that away from your daughter? If this is the wake-up call that Mike needs, or particularly your daughter needs, that, Mike isn't such a good person, then so be it. I think it's better that they call off the wedding and deal with this issue rather than committing to a wedding, like enabling this harassment and discrimination against Adam and letting it fester into the future. No one's going to be happy there. So I'm with you on this one, OP. You did the right thing by showing her that, and obviously she was just as disgusted as you'd expect her to be. Not the a-hole. Now in the comments, Bad B Crow says, not the a-hole. You saved your daughter from getting married to an ableist bigot. It was much better for her to find out what he's really like now than after they're bound together by legal paperwork. Holy cow, this. Imagine how she would feel if she didn't find out until after marriage, or worse, after kids. She cares about her brother, and her fiancé showed his true colors. Better to find out before it becomes more complicated to leave. God, what if they ended up having a kid with a disability? Bullet fully dodged there. Or if he taught their kids ableism despite her influence, and they treated her brother and other disabled people terribly. I know a few people who have misogynists for sons due to their child's father, despite their best efforts to raise compassionate children. Yup, you really do not want to raise children with a bigot. Mixing bigots with tolerant people is, unfortunately, like mixing one tiny red sock in a load of whites. It's so tiny because it's a toddler sock, and it was hidden under everything else that you missed it. But you definitely see it now, when everything you pull out is pink. Mixing colors is beautiful, mixing cultures is beautiful, mixing families is beautiful, but mixing ableists is not. Not the a-hole. Oh, hell no. Do not let your daughter marry that prick. But if OP prevented daughter from marrying Mike, he would be just as bad as Mike. Hopefully, she stays true to her word now that she's realized what a scummy, controlling snob he is. Obviously, he can't actually stop her, if that's what she wants. It's the 21st century. My point was that he's a horrible man. And not the a-hole. The wedding is not off because of you, it's off because of Mike's snobbishness and ableism. You know the old thing about how you can tell a person's true self by their treatment of waitstaff and cashiers? It applies equally well here. Your daughter deserved to know what her fiancé was saying. She might not be happy right now, but your daughter dodged a bullet and you're the one who yelled at her to duck. And our next post is by user FunC8083, titled, Am I the a-hole for not giving my daughter the basement suite after I renovated it only because she refused to give up her room upstairs? So I've been remarried for 2 years now, and we recently had a son. I also have a 14-year-old daughter from my first marriage and a 12 and 9-year-old stepsons. When my wife was 5 months pregnant, I asked my daughter if she could swap rooms with my stepsons. We had only 4 bedrooms at the time, and my daughter had the largest room. Our plan was for my daughter to take the second largest room, my stepsons to share the larger room, and convert the smallest room into a nursery. I thought this was a fairly reasonable ask, but my daughter made it into a huge fight. And worse was when my ex got involved, who then threatened to take me to court to reduce my custody of my daughter all over a room. This caused way too much stress at home, and I gave in, which I do regret now. But I then proceeded to renovate the basement suite. With my father's help, the basement now had the largest bedroom with a lounge and a full bathroom. It's very easily the nicest part of the house. The kids then started fighting over who would move down there, and I very firmly told my daughter that I renovated it because she refused to give up her room. So my 12-year-old stepson gets to move down there. I don't know if it's just puberty, but my daughter has become extremely hostile and downright mean over this. She no longer comes over as much as before, citing the unfair room as the reason. My ex fully supports her, and I have to wait 5 months before I can even fight this in court. At this point, I'm not even sure if it's worth the legal cost because she'll be 15 in December, and her opinion will count in the court. Am I the a-hole for not giving in to my daughter's, frankly, bratty demands? It's killing me that my daughter feels like I'm pushing her out of the family, but I want to stay true to what I think is right. All attempts to get us in family therapy has been denied by my ex, and my poor father now feels terrible because he's being partly blamed since he helped with the renovations. I can't really answer this one. I really feel like I would need to live this situation to understand the ins and outs of it. I'm inclined to say not the a-hole for this one because it seems like this is parental alienation by the ex, but I really just don't know. I'm not there. So I'm not really going to give a judgment on this one. Now in the comments, The Final Frontier says, I don't think you're an a-hole, but you haven't handled this well. Your daughter is in that awkward teen phase, and if the initial room was always hers, assuming your wife and stepsons moved into your house, then I can totally see her feeling displaced in favor of the new family and the new baby. I think it depends on how you asked her and explained the situation. She now sees a nice fancy room downstairs, and her stepbrothers get it, and she feels further punished. Not saying she's right and she's definitely acting bratty and entitled, but you might want to examine why your daughter feels so displaced when she visits and lives with you. Not the a-hole for this situation specifically. But she literally got what she wanted though. They had to go to a different course because she wasn't going to agree. So she kept what she wanted originally. She has no reason to feel punished or displaced. She's being enabled by her abusive mom. I've actively watched my sister go through some horrible custody crap, taking abuse from her son because her ex is brainwashing him to hate her and she has to play nice for court purposes. She just moved to another state for a job opportunity and has a year to show that it's a good place for her son to be as well, / that she can support him there, and his dad is already turning it around that the courts are deeming her unfit to be a mum 100% instead of realizing that she was his main provider for 13 years. When it comes to manipulative exes and courts, there's no good way to handle this crap. I think OP did everything they were supposed to do, to the point where he didn't force his daughter to move when she didn't want to. Daughter is being brainwashed by the mum, plain and simple. Edit: parental alienation is what I'm looking for. 100% not the a-hole. But the daughter didn't even know that they would renovate the basement. She thought she would have to trade in her space for a crappier one. OP should have at least offered her the basement. Why would they offer her the biggest bedroom when she already had the biggest bedroom before? That makes zero sense. They renovated because she refused to give up her space. They did it for the other kids because she wasn't having it. She got her cake. She doesn't get to eat someone else's because it's bigger than hers. Think about it from her perspective. She already feels left out and like she's being replaced. Then dad decides he wants to take her room, where her memories are, and give it to someone else, thus making her feel even more replaceable. So, she fights for what is hers, but then she sees them giving something bigger and better to the people replacing her. I'm not saying it's right, but that's how this kid is feeling. Plus, I highly doubt the OP offered to finish the basement for her as a compromise. Not the a-hole. If there is one here, it's your ex. Your request of your daughter was reasonable given the dynamics of the children in the household. At 14, she's old enough to understand this, but it sounds like there are other things at play that are influencing her behavior. The divorce, your ex poisoning the well, trying to blend families, and her feeling pushed out, that make me empathetic towards her. I kind of think you're the a-hole. You got remarried, you moved other children into your house, and then you wanted your daughter to give up her only space in the house, where she must have felt like an outsider, to move into a smaller room. And now you've given the newer room with its own bathroom to one of your stepchildren. Having her own bathroom, and not having to share with boys who she's not related to, would be a big thing for her. I honestly haven't seen anywhere in your post where you put your own child first. It was always what's best for you, or what's best for your stepchildren. When do you care what's best for her? I'm surprised how long it took to find this verdict. Most of these verdicts seem to assume that he did a good job of integrating the family and making sure his daughter still felt loved and valued, rather than replaced by a new family and helping her to feel comfortable suddenly living with two unrelated male children. I don't see anything here to indicate he did that. The only example we have to go on is this instance, and it was handled poorly by him. He wanted her to make a change to accommodate his family without talking to her about her concerns and how she feels about it. Since his post didn't include anything about how she felt, I assume he never asked. Instead of being the adult and finding out more about why she didn't want to change rooms so that he could assure her and/or compromise, he created something nice for someone in the new family and said she couldn't have it because she wasn't willing to give up her things for his new baby. And he built a room, which he must have had the means to do all along, instead of having her take a smaller room to accommodate his new baby. Everything he did here seemed like her feelings don't matter. She's just treated by her parent as a brat who won't do what's easiest for the adults. If this is an example of how he's been integrating the family, it's no wonder she wants out of there. Posted by user Possible Throwaway 80k. Titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my ex's daughter that I have my own family? This sounds really messed up, but please hear me out. I have, 34 female, lived with my ex-boyfriend, 36 male, for about 3 years. We weren't dating when I moved in. We started out as roommates, and after about a year, we started dating. He had a daughter from a previous relationship who would visit before we started dating, who was 13 at the time. She's now 16. She'd be over to visit quite often, and we included her when we could when she was here. We developed a pretty good relationship, but her mum was still heavily involved in her life, and I never saw myself as a stepmom to her. We broke up at the beginning of December 2019. We just aren't a good fit for each other amongst other things. We decided to keep the rental agreement as it worked for both of us, and due to restrictions in 2020. I started seeing my current fiancé, 34 male, in April of last year, and have now begun the steps of moving in with him, as I'm expecting in the next 4 months. Ex's daughter still visits and often asks to hang out or to come to the new apartment when I move out officially. I've tried to be as accommodating as possible and explained that her father and I are no longer together and that we probably won't be seeing each other often, if even at all. Things came to a head last week when she tried to hand off a box of her items that she wanted me to take to the new apartment, so she had some things of her own when she came to spend the night. Which, we never agreed on this. She also asked if she could help name her new sister when she finally arrived, and I was extremely uncomfortable after the whole thing. I decided to have a talk with her and my ex, and told them that this had to stop. She asked why she couldn't be included, and I told her that I wasn't her mum, and that I was starting a family of my own, and that she already had a mum to look forward to. X said that I took on a motherly title in her life for 2 years, and that I was wrong to try and shut her out after the breakup. She left after the conversation, and has reached out after the fact to ask if there's any way she can still be in my life. I've been ignoring the messages, and focusing on moving the last of my things to the new place. My ex told me that I'm a cold beer, and that he won't forgive me for hurting her like this. I feel like the a-hole for cutting her out, but I really want to move on with my life. Am I the a-hole here? And extra info, I'm moving nearly across state, / I'm uncomfortable with her considering herself my child and my responsibility when she has 2 parents who are heavily involved in her life. Keeping her involved in my life affects my fiancé as well, who has no interest in her or having any sort of relationship with her. I treated her as I would a friend's child. If she was here, I treated her well and kindly, but I was never Mum. I don't hate her. She's not a bad kid, I just have my own stuff going on, and I'd prefer to distance myself as my ex plans on seeing others in the future, and I'm sure me hanging around would be uncomfortable for any new partner he has. Unfortunately, she grew very much attached to you in the time that you spent with that girl. That's not your fault particularly, since you treated her more like a partner's child rather than a child of your own. I want to say for wanting to move on with your life and not having attachments to your ex and his own child, you're not an a-hole, obviously, you're not an a-hole for wanting that. But surely, you realize this child is vulnerable and has so much attachment to you that letting her down as easily as possible would be the right thing to do. But you chose not to do that. You did start off well with that, however. When she would come over and visit, you said you won't be seeing her father again. But when she brought that box of items over, you turned up the heat on her. I don't think she should have been included in that conversation between you, her, and your ex. Having a one-on-one and being kinder to her would have made you not the a-hole in my opinion, but you didn't do that. I feel like your ex is also to blame for not helping her accept that you're no longer in his or her life, and then blaming you for trying to shut her out when that should have been an expectation. An expectation in the sense that he should have expected that you're moving on from her and you didn't want to see her anymore, and that's perfectly reasonable. So my vote is everyone sucks here. Now in the comments, Rolling Katamari says, not the a-hole. Your ex is the a-hole here for not shutting this down from the beginning. You've explained and explained, but this girl just wasn't getting it. The fact she's still texting you means she still doesn't get it. I feel very sad for her, and I think you do as well, but she's not your responsibility. Her parents need to sit her down and explain. You never were her mother or stepmother. You have your own life with your own fiancé, with your own child beginning now. At one point, you have to let go of anything to do with your ex and his life. It's a low blow of him saying he'll never forgive you. I'm glad he's out of your life. This, I could understand if it was a recent breakup, but it was over a year ago, and she's already told the girl that she was no longer seeing her father, so she shouldn't expect a relationship afterwards. The fact that the father is playing along with this, like OP is in the wrong, says everything I need to know about him. OP isn't wrong, she's just moving on. Not to mention she only dated the girl's father for 2 years. It's not like she helped raise her from the crib. It is sad the relationship has to end, but OP has set her boundaries in line. After that, it's on the father to take care of his daughter so OP can focus on her priorities. I think her father, or both her parents, need to talk to her and leave OP out of it. At 16, you are old enough to understand how breakups work, and that OP just isn't a parent or guardian for this girl. I can understand where you're coming from. It's a shame you couldn't be kinder. Let me ask you, would you be okay with someone treating your unborn child, down the road, the way you treated her? Soft, you're the a-hole. I think you should have talked to your ex and made it clear that it wasn't going to happen and given him a choice. To steer her away from you, or then you would sit down and tell her. Yeah, this. I feel really bad for the girl. Not OP's fault, but still kinda cold? Not being direct though could give the girl false hope and lead her on. Sort of just deflecting disappointment until later. It's harsh, but OP is trying to be honest, and it sounds like she already tried telling the girl indirectly, and her dad just encouraged the daughter to have certain expectations. Being direct and being kind aren't mutually exclusive. It might have been easier to handle the situation with grace if the girl's father had decided to actually, parent? Seriously though, not excusing the 16-year-old's behavior, but yeah, most teens do push boundaries, and I can see any average teenager become overexcited and think of baby names and get caught up in the, I'm gonna be a big sister. But why is dad not doing anything about it? She's 16, and it's normal to get ahead of yourself, but it's not that difficult to reel a 16-year-old back in place. Like, I know that you formed a bond with OP in the past few years, but unfortunately, we're not together anymore. And that means that even your relationship is going to be adversely affected. Apologies for the length, but there's 2 edits to read after all of this. Final edit for now. I spoke to X's daughter this morning over the phone. I explained that people come and go, and that this is just one of those situations. I wished her well, and told her she's free to call and text every once in a while, and she was still unhappy. My fiancé told me to leave it and move on, which I'm beginning to think is best. And final edit part 2. I'm leaving for my new house tomorrow, and she tried to call X's daughter to apologize. She still wanted all or nothing from me. She wanted me to see her as my daughter, which I really couldn't do. I wished her well once again, and I hope she can heal with time. I accept I'm somewhat of an a-hole, but I'm ready to move on. I won't be looking at this thread anymore. A lot of you are sick for wishing death on my baby and fiancé. Grow the hell up. Our next post is by user GF Eggs Throwaway, titled, Am I the a-hole for not allowing my girlfriend to send her food back for a second time? So I, 28 male, work the graveyard shift as a corrections officer in a prison. I've been dating my girlfriend, 26 female, for just under a year now. About once a week or so, some of my co-workers and I like to stop at a local diner to get a bite to eat on the way home. They are very accommodating to us COs, as well as our brother cops, and other people who work the third shift at an area factory, as we give them a lot of business. They happily make burgers, sandwiches, nachos, etc. first thing in the morning for us, which we are all very appreciative of since it's the evening time to us. So the other day, I felt like stopping after work. None of my buddies wanted to go, so I texted my girlfriend to see if she wanted me to treat her to breakfast before work. She said that she did, and so we met at the diner. We both ordered the eggs, hash browns, bacon, toast combo. She ordered her eggs halfway between over easy and over medium, and her bacon chewy, not crispy but not limp. When the food came, she decided that her eggs were too close to medium. She told the server that she wanted them mostly easy, but just barely starting to set on the outside so that there were no runny whites. The server took her food back. I was slightly embarrassed because her food was just fine and was what she asked for from what I could see, but I didn't say anything. When the food came the second time, she decided that her eggs were still overdone, even though they looked less done than her first batch. The server offered to bring her food back, but I interjected. No, the food's fine, they did a good job. She will eat it. Long story short, when we left the restaurant, we got into a huge fight. She had to work, so we didn't have much of a chance to discuss it, but when she came over later, she laid into me about how I had treated her like a child and said that I had no right to decide for her whether or not her order was right. She then accused me of caring more about the server than her and implied that I wanted to have an affair with her, which is crazy since she's at least 40 and I'm pretty sure married with kids. I shot back that she was being way too demanding, that it was embarrassing since I was a regular there, that they did a perfectly good job with her food, and it wasn't as if she'd asked for over easy and then gave her scrambled, that it wasn't fair for the restaurant to lose money over her for being so picky, etc. The way I see it, if you're going to ask someone else to cook your food, you have to give them at least a little leeway. But I can kind of understand what she meant when she said that I had treated her like a child. Am I the a-hole? I'm gonna go with not the a-hole here. She shouldn't be so demanding with her eggs at a diner of all places. They tried to make the eggs to her request, but you'd be back and forth all night wasting countless eggs just to make her happy if you allowed it to continue. I do think your diner with a relationship in this instance was more important than keeping your girlfriend happy. So yes, you went about it a little bluntly, but you had to save face somehow. I would be just as embarrassed if I were you in that situation, so I can't really blame you for your actions. My vote is not the a-hole. Now in the comments, Bonnie Bluest says, not the a-hole, and if she's that picky about her eggs, she shouldn't order them. It's very annoying to restaurant staff. Not the a-hole, I agree. I like my omelets a certain way, and I can't find anywhere that makes it that way. I don't order omelets unless at my hometown diner. She's expecting too much from a vague description of what she wants. Years ago, while working as a server, I had a lady order a chocolate shake and send it back because it had too much chocolate and she's allergic to it. She then demanded I make her another chocolate shake with only a little chocolate in it. She sent that back too. I'm gonna go against the grain here and say a soft everyone sucks here. Here's why. Dude, I was embarrassed for you. What the hell is not crispy but not limp bacon? I totally get why you were uncomfortable with her demands. I was frustrated for the poor server and the cook. So she gets to be an a-hole in this situation, albeit not a huge one because she clearly has very particular feelings about her food. Maybe she needs to recalibrate her expectations of this sort of establishment, or find a better way to communicate what she expects. Which brings me to you. I'm going to give you a soft a-hole too, because you did patronize her. Instead of cutting her off and overruling her, you should have just been honest. You could have said something like, "Babe, please, I'm a regular here and I really like these people. I feel like you're being too demanding and I'm embarrassed. I'm worried about it being awkward next time I visit." You know, something along those lines. Instead, you spoke over her and embarrassed her, which was a lose-lose situation. It's a little worrying that she went to the affair scenario. She sounds very anxious. Maybe there's something else on her mind? All in all, OP, this is hopefully just a learning experience for you both, and you enjoy many happy breakfasts together. I think your alternative response sounds more reasonable when read, but he would still be cutting her off. She still would have been embarrassed and she still would have been angry. His girlfriend was being rude, overly demanding, and a general pain in the ass. I think OP did fine by trying to end this interaction quickly and decisively. His girlfriend was being entirely unreasonable in her requests and was using the customer service dynamic to flex on the restaurant staff. She knew what she was doing and felt very comfortable doing it. OP had no intention of being associated with her bullcrap, and instead of projecting tacit support by remaining silent, he chose to take action. He could have chosen to say something closer to your more measured alternative, but in the moment, he did what he had to in order to support the server and restaurant and to curtail his girlfriend's behavior. And I think it's important to point out that the more measured alternative was likely to devolve into a back and forth between OP and his girlfriend while dragging the faultless server along for the ride. Instead, he provided the server with the opportunity to disengage from the situation and to move on to her other tables. At this point, OP was free to explain his position in a more nuanced manner while saving the server from the awkwardness of having to witness the conversation. To be clear, I think your approach is perfectly legitimate, empathetic, and well-reasoned, but his approach had its advantages too. I think it's also a mouthful to come up with, and then say all of that out loud in the moment where you're communicating and ordering stuff from a waiter. Like, it's kind of awkward to have that whole big exchange while the waitstaff is standing there waiting for the two of you to resolve this issue. Posted by user BugsRabbit1, titled, "Am I the a-hole for selling the car I was going to give my daughter to help pay for my daughter-in-law's fertility treatment?" So my eldest son is 37 and married to my daughter-in-law, who is also 37. 3 months ago, they both came over and told my wife and I that they had done 2 rounds of IVF, but unfortunately neither were successful, and they needed some more money so they could secure another round of IVF with an egg donor this time. Obviously, my wife and I are glad to offer help, and fortunately had some money we could give. However, given the short notice, the total was still short, which brought me to the decision to sell my old Boxster since I didn't use it anymore and have another car. I managed to sell it to an old friend and had more than enough for my daughter-in-law's fertility treatment. For those interested, it was thankfully a success. They're both excited and the pregnancy has been going well. The problem is that my youngest daughter, who is 19, found out that I sold the Porsche in order to help and was extremely upset with me. Didn't understand why until she told me that I'd apparently promised her when she was 14 that the Porsche would be hers after she got her degree. She's never mentioned this before and I don't recall it happening, but I probably did, so I apologized and promised to just buy her another car or even another Boxster. However, she's still not happy with me and told me to just forget it. Even if I remembered, the time sensitivity of my son and daughter-in-law's situation would have taken preference because my daughter still has a few years until then and I'd be able to buy another car for her. Am I the a-hole? OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the a-hole. I like to be a man of my word and I promised my daughter this car and reneged, even without my knowledge, so I understand her frustration. However, in light of the circumstances at the time and my willingness to still keep my end of the bargain, makes me feel like she's being unreasonable. Well, I feel like this is a tough situation. If you truly are a man of your word, you shouldn't have sold the car because your youngest daughter became attached to it over time. Unfortunately, you did do the wrong thing in this situation, even if it helped get your other child the fertility treatment they needed. This seems like it's something that should have been brought up more often between you and your daughter, and I struggle to accept the fact that it was never mentioned again until just now. That doesn't seem like a real thing to me. Maybe you're just in denial, because surely you would have heard her mentioning it at least a few times in these last 5 years. I don't know. My vote for this is you're the a-hole regardless. Now in the comments, Amid the Primal Thing says, "You're the a-hole. It seems that your younger daughter had an attachment to both 1, the promise you made her, and 2, the vehicle itself. To find out that the promise you made her wasn't even worth you remembering must have been an emotional blow on top of losing a car that had some sort of inherent value to her. I also find it worrisome that you say she's never mentioned this before, and I don't recall it happening, but I probably did. This indicates to me that you have a pattern of doing this. You have a pattern of promising things to her, whether they're physical items or physical presents, and then forget to follow through on things often enough that you yourself say that you probably in fact did it this time too. Your younger daughter is not somehow less than your older son and daughter-in-law, which is what your actions are telling her right now, and which is what you were literally saying when you say that your daughter-in-law's situation takes preference. I get the feeling that because of the age difference between yourself, your kids, and your kids with one another, there have been some historic imbalances like this which have led to your daughter feeling written off, hence her telling you to forget it. She's close to giving up on you, I think. Is that something you're really willing to risk? If I were you, I'd buy the car back and give it to her before you lose her forever due to your blatant disregard and disproportionate favoritism. Exactly. He has grandbaby fever and has tunnel vision, thus creating a GC in the process. His self-awareness is amazing. Quixotic Logophile says, "You're the a-hole. It's very commendable that you helped your son and daughter-in-law, but you're completely dismissing your daughter's feelings. You made a promise and forgot about it, while she got sentimentally attached to the idea. You broke your promise and you can't fix it by just getting another one. A different Porsche would not be the same as the one that her dad had as she was growing up. It's not just a car to her, it's a piece of you that you promised her that she can now never have. You should have at least sat down and talked to her about it before selling it. And even if he were to get it back, it would be tainted with the memory that the dad didn't remember the promise he made, didn't remember the times they spent together in that car, and a constant pressure point of her feelings being dismissed, disregarded, and overlooked. Frankly, I'm surprised, OP, at how this was never brought up in discussion with your daughter at all until after you sold it. You're the a-hole, OP." And our next post is by user Queen Toxic, titled, "Am I the a-hole for telling my mother-in-law that I'm not having kids, even though I still plan on it? So my boyfriend, 26 male, and I, 24 female, have been dating for 2.5 years, and recently moved in with his mum due to financial problems with the pandemic. It's been less than a year of us with her, and we're moving out at the beginning of May. Sunday morning, I was catching up on sleep since I didn't sleep very well during the week. My mother-in-law was slamming cabinets and slamming doors at 9 a.m, and my boyfriend asked if she could be quieter since I don't get much sleep during the week and use the weekend to catch up on it. She then went off about how she doesn't see how him and I could ever be parents because I sleep in. I sleep in until 10:30 on the weekends because I get maybe 4 hours of sleep at night during the week, and that she's worried about us ever having kids. This isn't the first time she's criticized my parenting. She's also made it very clear she's worried I'm going to put chicken McNuggets in a baby food maker and feed that to my kids because I like to get McDonald's once every week or two. I wish I was over-exaggerating on that, but those were her exact words. Keep in mind, him and I both work full-time jobs right now, and don't own our own house, and we don't plan on having a family until we buy our own house and get married, which we've told her plenty of times. I was thinking of telling her that my boyfriend and I are just never going to have children since we're so incompetent, even though we originally planned on it years from now. She has an older son who at this point is never going to have kids and an estranged daughter. That leaves her son to be the only one who will give her the grandkids she's wanted. I'd figure telling her that we're not having kids would at least get her to stop complaining about my parenting ability when she has no idea how I'd actually parent. Am I the a-hole? And edit, a lot of people have been asking. Yes, we pay her rent. Yes, we cook and clean, as well as run errands for her when she needs it. We also buy our own groceries. The next place we're moving into, we're also paying rent. She doesn't normally slam cabinets and doors at 9 a.m, so maybe she was just in an awful mood that day. She had offered us lower rent than the marketplace because my significant other had just lost his job and was starting a new company himself. Him and I both work full-time. So you're saying you're still planning on having children eventually, but her only son that can give her grandkids will not be giving her grandkids? I can understand she's a pain to live with and she's said some outrageous things to you. People can be much crazier once you actually have to live with them, but you're really only going to send her mixed messages and lie to her for no good reason if you tell her you're not having kids, even though you still plan on it? Like, if that's the way you want to get her off your back for your potential parenting ability, then go ahead, I guess, but for sure there are better ways to go about this than to lie to her about the kids. I understand anxiety and insomnia is keeping you up during the week, and yes, she definitely should respect that. She's definitely an a-hole for pushing those boundaries, because it was an unnecessary thing for her to do. So I'm voting everyone sucks here. Now in the comments, OKLK says, everyone sucks here, or will suck if you go down that path. Retaliating to her complaints in the way you suggest is just going to kick off a big argument about how you perceive she perceives you as a future parent. It doesn't help anyone. The adult thing to do is to sit down and have a calm, rational discussion about how you can all live harmoniously together in her house. Remember, you are a guest in her house. She has welcomed you in, and there will need to be adjustments made by all of you. She's probably never had to worry about how loudly she does things in her own home until now. So go easy. Focus on the real issue here. How you live together. Do not make escalation your go-to tactic when drama is brewing, unless you want to be miserable at home until you can get a place of your own. I agree. Why poke the bear? I just wouldn't tell her anything. And as soon as OP moves out, go super low contact. Just grey rock her just no mother-in-law self. One of the most effective tactics I've found for dealing with other people's volatility is keeping your head down and leaving the room when they start on their nonsense, and don't match their energy if they start getting escalated. Grey rocking works. Not the a-hole. I would tell her that you agree with what she's saying, and because of that, you and your boyfriend have decided that you shouldn't have children. Tell her she has convinced you that you and your boyfriend would not be good parents. This is absolutely what I'd do in OP's position. Trying to argue or defend your stance or anything else wouldn't get anywhere. Mother-in-law sounds like she's just about as judgy as they come, and getting into a debate about parenting techniques of non-existent children is a quick trip to madness. So yep, next time she gets on a roll, just calmly nod and agree and thank her for her wise observations, which allowed them to be able to avoid making such bad decisions as to having kids. Then say nothing more. Oh, and not the a-hole. For those saying she would be in the wrong because OP is a guest in the house, okay, yeah, she is a guest. But just as there is guest etiquette, there is host etiquette too. And there's just no excuse for being a basically negative and unpleasant person. Everyone sucks here. Your mother-in-law more, but lying to her wouldn't be the right way to handle this, and saying, we're never going to have children since we're so incompetent, just sounds petty and passive-aggressive. Ask your significant other to speak to his mother about this, and try not to intensify the drama between now and May. So, what do you guys think about this one? Do you think that my everyone sucks here judgment was unfair? I kind of feel like it was a little bit unfair, but I guess the way that I reasoned it was a bit stupid, even though I feel like saying no, I'm not going to have kids is a stupid thing to do. I guess I want to know what you guys think of it down in the comments below. I'm really stupid with my opinions sometimes, I understand that. Alright guys, that's the end of the video. Friendly reminder that I'm now posting daily on my second channel, Markee 2. If you want to laugh at memes with me, link is down in the description below. On phone, you just click that little arrow underneath the video. I also want to say thank you to all my channel members and Patreon subscribers. Your names are currently floating down the screen here, and I love to see all of you guys. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Thank you for supporting me. I really appreciate it. If you see yourself on screen, I want you to give yourself a big pat on the back for being amazing as always, and thank you for supporting me again. I do hope that you guys have a good day, night, sleep, whatever it is you're up to. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.